For June 16th. I'd like to welcome everyone. It's good to see so many people here today. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Baines. Councilmember Brand. Councilmember Brandow. Councilmember Olivier. Councilmember Quintero. Councilmember Soria. And Council President Caprielio.
I am here. Thank you. Next, we'll have the invocation from the Islamic Cultural Center. Welcome, sir. Good to see you again. And if we'd all stand, and after the invocation, we'll do the salute to our flag.
Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon all of you. First, before I start, if I could, because our nation is mourning right now, I would like to share that the Islamic Cultural Center and good-willed Muslims of this nation all stand with our compatriots against every and all form of violence, terror, and hatred. And we hope that you understand that what happened on last Saturday night is not representative of our faith or our people. Thank you. Thank you, Council President Capriolio, Council Member Baines for the invitation, Go Broncos, and the entire Council. I thank you on behalf of Faith and Community, which I'm honored to serve as a board member, as well as the Islamic Cultural Center of Fresno, which I proudly serve as a director. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, we ask you in all the beautiful names that we address you with in our own traditions and languages, God, Allah, Jehovah, Dios, Lord, and all that is holy. We ask that you bless this council, our leaders and officials, to be guided in their work, to be united in their work, so that their work is solely for the people. We ask you to cause their division and disagreement to act as tools to determine the best path for all the situations that they face, so that their work bring about the most good for our beautiful city of Fresno. We ask you to deepen their understanding of all that afflicts our people, so that they can create solutions to provide for us opportunities to enrich our society and create a more equitable Fresno. Oh God, we are grateful that our community is so diverse, a beautiful tapestry of languages, ethnicities, nationalities, religious beliefs and traditions, political ideologies. And oh God, we thank you for those differences, which add so much depth and enrich all of our experiences. For without them, our community would be incomplete. It is through our differences that we are afforded multiple perspectives as a means to solve our problems. So, dear God, we ask you to continue to guide us and inspire us, not in spite of our differences, but because of our differences, to continue to allow us to see the beauty in each other, to continue to carry out the work of peace, the work of relationship building, the work of community, the work of educating each other, the work of servitude. May you, the Most High, direct our council members to base all that they work for solely on justice, fairness, truth, and ethics, so that they inspire us to take ownership of our community, take pride in our community, in our people, in our schools, in our churches, and our institutions, to establish a more prevalent and accessible justice for all, and to strengthen all of us in this great chain that we call Fresno. Oh Lord, let it be so. Amen. Thank you.
The flag, please. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very inspiring. Thank you very much. Okay, next is the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have a few changes to the agenda, and you all should have a sheet as well with the changes. The first change is 1I, regarding right turn improvements, intersection of Herndon and Blackstone Avenue projects, has been removed from the agenda by staff. The next change is under general administration. Actually, it's the last item under general administration, file ID 16724, regarding Cesar Chavez Foundation project. The correct amount for the impact fee waiver is $635,519.55. The next change is the proclamation for today regarding Alzheimer's. It's going to be removed from the agenda by staff. And finally, scheduled communication had to be rescheduled, so it won't be heard today.
Very good. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Let me make a change real quick. I think I
course.
said 1I, but it should be 1H. That the first change was, it's been removed from the agenda.
Not I, but H.
H.
Thank you. We have a motion by Member Baines, second by Member Soria. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0 with Member Olivier absent. Are there any changes to the minutes of June 7, 8, and 9? No changes. Okay, very good. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from each of those dates? Motion by Member Baines, seconded by me. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0 with Member Olivier absent. Now we go to council member reports and brief comments. Member Soria.
I just have a couple comments. One, I just want to start off thanking Reza for his prayer this afternoon. And I, too, want to just stand with the victims that were tragically impacted in Orlando. So I'd actually like to ask for a moment of silence for the victims, for the families of this terrorist attack that happened just this last Saturday at Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. So if we can get a moment of silence. Thank you. So again, we just want to remember and stand in solidarity with all the folks impacted by this tragedy. An attack on any American is an attack on all of us. So I just wanted to make sure that the community knows, and in particular the LGBT community, which has been significantly, I know, impacted, not only there in Orlando, but I know that just over the weekend in the Tower District, we had a number of folks come out in solidarity to show the respect and make sure they knew that we were standing from California, from Fresno, California, with all the victims and the families victims. So I want to thank all of you for showing that support. Then just one other comment that I wanted to make, I actually want to welcome Katie Altobello, who is here. If you can stand up. And she's actually just joined my office yesterday, officially. She is a fellow, just recently graduated from Columbia University, graduate student. She is a Del Mar, California native. She attended Loyola Marymount University for her undergrad. As I mentioned, she just recently graduated with a master's and an MPA from Columbia University with a concentration in environmental policy. She's worked in the past for LA City Council member Mike Bonin and for the City of Del Mar City Manager's Office. She's serving this next 10 weeks as an Environmental Defense Fund Climate Course Fellow for District 1 here in the summer. So we're very lucky to have her on board. She's going to be specifically working on a project that we are doing in the Tower District. It's called Power the Tower. It is an effort between my office, the Environmental Defense Fund, Fresno State, and Tower District businesses, where we are researching ways to make the Tower District more energy efficient, helping business owners and property owners shift to renewable energy, and eventually the hope, long-term hope, would be that we turn the tower into a net zero neighborhood. So that's long-term. And so she's helping with the initial steps. Again, it's in partnership with Fresno State, so we are very excited to have her for the next 10 weeks, so you guys will see her around. I know that this project actually has caught some attention with national energy experts. We were invited to the Rocky Mountain Institute a few weeks ago, where I participated with stakeholders. So I'm just very proud to be able to continue and have someone of her caliber here in our office working to advance this issue, which is so important. It's going to help so many small businesses in the Tower District that sometimes do struggle with their energy bills. So thank you, and welcome to the City of Fresno, and welcome to City Hall, Katie.
You finished?
Yes, oh, I'm done. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone on the dais here that would like to pull any consent item? Now is your opportunity. Member Soria?
I wanted to pull item 1L.
Okay. Yeah, any other council members wish to pull any item? Now's the opportunity. Seeing none, do I have take this out to the public? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on any item contained in our consent calendar? This is your opportunity to do so. Seeing none, back to the dais. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended? Motion by Member Quintero, second by Member Brand. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0 with Member Olivier absent. Okay, on the pulled item 1L, is there someone from the mayor's? Oh, good morning, or good afternoon, Georgianne. 1L has been pulled, and it's your opportunity to address that item.
Okay. First, I want to read into a record that a clarification that the scope of services will be revised to reflect that the city will be Mr. Campbell's exclusive city client. Wanted to get that on the record. It is mentioned in the staff report. I will start. So before you today is an item to award a consultant services contract with Campbell Strategy and Advocacy for an amount not to exceed $270,000 for professional lobbying and consulting services in California. This contract is for an 18-month period. As you may recall, the city has not had a state lobbyist present in Sacramento since 2012 when, unfortunately, we had to cut our contract due to the Great Recession. We do believe that the funding climate has changed very significantly in Sacramento for local governments with the loss of redevelopment agencies in 2012. The state has relied very heavily on proceeds from the cap and trade program and to replace funding streams. As we have moved forward in different development projects and economic development projects, this funding source has been one of the few funding sources that we can access to fill funding gaps for projects. We conducted an RFQ, a request for qualifications, in April, and the city received 2 proposals, and we are recommending that the contract be awarded to Campbell Strategy and Advocacy. We determined them to be the best selection to represent the city, given the firm's deep relationships with the governor's office, key legislative offices, and committee staff, and the governor's cabinet members. The commitment to Fresno that we would be their sole city client, and their familiarity with the budget and legislative process in the state. This, as I mentioned, the scope will focus on, I didn't mention, the contract will be for 18 months, and the scope will focus primarily on 3 components: legislative and regulatory strategy, relationship building with key officials, and coalition building for city legislative and regulatory priorities. With that, and Mr. Campbell is here today, and Greg, do you want to stand up real quick? Wave. And he and I are both here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Member Soria.
Thank you, Council President. And so I do want to thank Georgianne for making that clarification. I know yesterday I was asking some of these questions regarding, I know that it was in the draft or in the staff report, but it makes me a little bit feel better that it's actually in the contract. As an attorney, I think sometimes you have to put things into actual contracts so that it can bind folks, and so I appreciate. I know that Greg has been doing work for us, so I also just wanted to give him an opportunity maybe to share. I know that he's been working with us for a few months. I will say that I was a strong supporter of having a lobbyist. I know when I first came on board, I had met with the mayor, and I too, I know the value of what it means to have a lobbyist in Sacramento, especially right now when, as you mentioned, there are a number of pots of funding that the city of Fresno can benefit, cap and trade being one of them. I know that you guys have been working very hard to ensure that the city of Fresno gets its fair share, and without having someone in Sacramento knocking those doors or having those key relationships, it makes it very difficult for our residents to benefit from essentially those taxpayer dollars that do belong to our community and should be coming here because of the great needs that we have. But I did want to see if we could give maybe Greg an opportunity to share about what he's been doing in Sacramento during the time that he's been contracted with the city.
Yeah, before we bring him up, can I do want to do one thing, because I want to make sure that I don't know how humble he is if he'll brag on himself. So can I just do a quick brag and then have him come up?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we have had Greg working for us for a couple months under informal contract. And one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention, because it is quite remarkable, we began talking with Greg in December, and we were talking to him about working with the administration and putting something in the budget to fund some sort of transformational communities initiative, which is something that, with all of the work that we've done on our general plan, our development code, the BRT project, all of these things that we've been working on for the last 7 years that have been consistent with all of the things that the state has required us to do as part of SB 375 and AB 32. We wanted to make sure that there would be, we could create a funding stream to help us implement those initiatives. So we started talking in December. By January 10th, we had a carve-out in the governor's budget that included $100 million for a transformative climate community project. Now, that was inspired by Fresno and by Greg's work and conversations with the administration. A few short months later, by May, the Assembly version of the state budget included the following language: require that 25% of the Transformative Climate Communities program be set aside for the city of Fresno. The only city in the state of California to be called out in the Assembly budget to be a direct line item of a percentage of 25% of a statewide pot of money. That is a direct result of what Greg has been able to accomplish in such a short time. I wasn't sure if he would be willing to brag so much on himself, and so I would love to have him come up and talk about a little bit more, but I wanted to get that out there so you guys could understand thus far what's been done under an informal contract basis, because I do think that's quite remarkable, because if that continues, there is $100 million in the Assembly and Governor's versions. The Senate version included a $400 million line item. So wherever that item lands as part of the final cap and trade program, we will be working diligently, and as I know Greg will, to make sure that 25% line item stands. That is a really, really big accomplishment for us as a city. So with that, I'd like to have Greg come up and say a few words, if that's okay, Councilmember Soria.
Absolutely. Welcome, Greg, to the city of Fresno.
Welcome, council member and everybody else. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. As Georgianne had said, I started working on this project 6 months ago, right when I left. Quick background. I worked for 20 years in the state capitol, the last 12 in the Speaker's office, and directly working as Chief of Staff for the previous 2 Speakers of the Assembly. When I went out on my own to start my lobbying firm, my very first meeting and my very first client was the city of Fresno. So there's a very dear and special place in my heart for the city. I immediately started working, and my experience of being in the Speaker's office gave me some perspective on how to better position Fresno. I think that I've learned more and more. I've only been here about every month since I got the contract. I expect to spend more time down here, but every time I've come down here, I've been able to learn more. And by doing that, I've been able to see how we could better position Fresno in the state. And I knew, working so close and being in part of the meetings where the big decisions got made on funding, it was usually dominated where there's more places, where there's larger constituencies, larger like Los Angeles or the Bay Area. So how to take what Fresno offers, the place that it fits in California's history, and how to best manage that and promote Fresno is something that I've been able to try and do because of my experience of being in the room when those big decisions are made. So quickly on this project, Georgiana outlined where we are. I feel great. Obviously, there's a lot of work to get this done, but specific carve-out in the Assembly budget, an increased amount of funding for the key program in the Senate leaves us in a very good position for when the final compromise happens in August on this funding source. But it won't just be that. There's now I've just been talking with the mayor's office about a big one-time infusion of housing money has been talked about in the budget. So the next time the mayor's up, we're going to set up some meetings to meet with the key players and how that housing money is going to get spent and try to figure out what are the most advantageous pots where we could have that money placed where Fresno could be the most competitive. So that's a little bit about what I've been doing. Again, I have the experience of having the decisions made at the highest level of state government, so I feel like I'm in a good position to put Fresno in front of the right people to try to make the case of making sure that they get their fair share, which over time I think people have found out that they haven't. And so my goal is to try to fix that for you and for the city.
Thank you, Greg. And I also want to thank Georgianne for sharing the information of the work that has already been done in the short amount of time that you've been on board. I think that it's very impressive that we've been able to move that far along, or this far along, because I too, with my experience in Sacramento, know how challenging it can get. So having someone with your expertise and the types of relationships is very invaluable to our city. In addition, I know that the scope of work includes not only the legislative portion, but we have a number of agencies, state agencies that the city of Fresno also interfaces with, and you're going to be that person that will also help us ensure that we're talking to the right people in those agencies, so that when we're applying for grants, like I think we just approved, was it last week, for a cap and trade, where we have that follow-up and someone in Sacramento that can make sure that that's hopefully getting funded.
Absolutely.
And so I know that the work that you'll provide to the city is going to be very important, or is going to continue to be very important that we continue this. One thing that I did want to add, because I didn't see in the scope of work, I'd like to get somewhat of a regular report. I know that obviously you're in communication constantly with the administration, but our body, as a legislative body as well, I think should be receiving some quarterly reports, maybe not face to face, but I think, and I don't know if this is something that we can incorporate, and if there's support to incorporate as part of the scope of work, but some quarterly reports, and because I know I have some interest in terms of statewide policy that I would like to be able to also have some input as a part of this
Absolutely.
legislative body. So
Seems very reasonable, very fair. I have no problem supplying that and trying. Again, what I'm looking to do is the best way I could position Fresno and all the needs of the city. So absolutely, I have no problem doing that.
And I think like one thing also, I'm also very involved with the League of Cities, but for our benefit too, a lot of things happen in the budget. Just as we're going through our budget, it'd be also good for us to kind of get your perspective in a report as to, what is happening in the California state budget where Fresno can benefit. Because I know that we get that through the League of Cities, but it's much broader because it's cities overall. But I think looking at it specifically for Fresno, that would be something that I would really like to have.
And I appreciate
well.
that, and that's kind of what I was mentioning with the housing piece. As soon as we saw that was one of the last bits of closures of how the budget deal got done, was there was an addition of $400 million one-time general fund money to support affordable housing. What that means is still to be worked out in a bill in August. So that's why immediately we started talking with the mayor's office about, okay, let's start to position ourselves on how we can properly get that money focused to where Fresno can be most competitive to receive some of that funding. But that's not the only one, but there are other examples like that.
Perfect. Okay, so those are all the just comments and questions that I had. So I'd like to make the motion, if we can include with that as part of the scope of work, that the council actually gets quarterly reports and, similarly during budget time, that kind of information. Thank you, Council President.
So the motion is to approve the item with that stipulation?
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion by Member Soria, second by Member Brandel. Next up is Member Brandau.
Georgianne, wanted to connect with you on this real quick. And I look forward to hearing more about the different grant opportunities. And like Councilmember Soria mentioned, it'd be great for council to kind of be updated. So I'm really glad to include that. You don't have a problem including? No. Okay.
Perfectly reasonable.
And then hypothetically, Georgianne, if a council member comes up with an idea that could use a consultant, what's the best approach to connect with the administration and see if that's a good fit for Greg to look at that?
Yeah, I think just so he's not getting, multiple directions from,
right.
Different folks. I think, absolutely. Just let us know. We'll, maybe send an email. We'll loop Greg in and get us all in the same communication chain and get the information that you need.
Perfect. Now, Georgianne, I did want to ask, because this is a commitment of money, is this in line with consulting agreements throughout the state of California? So as far as the price point.
Right. We did do a poll of the Big Ten cities, which is, we usually benchmark ourselves against the Big Ten cities because there's a good mix of both large and small cities. And it definitely is within that range. The ranges go anywhere from $25,000 a month to the larger cities to 15, 10, 13, 15, 5, 13 for cities similar to our size. The one thing I would say about Mr. Campbell is the exclusivity of us being the only city client is absolutely invaluable because a lot of the lobbyists that represent the other Big Ten cities represent multiple cities and counties. So when they're going into the Capitol and they're walking into a room, a legislator is going to look at them and say, okay, who are you? Are you LA today? Are you Anaheim? Are you such and such county or this county? When there are multiple cities competing for the same pot of money, who are they going to be there representing? How are they going to be able to best advocate for the largest chunk of money? So I think, we already have had an example. Greg was telling me 2 days ago, he bumped into Speaker Rendon in the hall and he said, "Oh, I wore my Fresno t-shirt the other day." He looks at Greg and he sees Fresno. He only sees Fresno. Really, I think that's invaluable. So definitely it's in line, and with the extra bonus of having the exclusivity of being the only city client, I think is huge.
Okay, cool. And then one other question, completely different. So in the budget, we talked about adding a lobbyist for water specifically. Correct. In the budget hearings.
Correct.
And so so those will be two completely separate. I don't expect Mr. Campbell to go after water projects related funding if we have a lobbyist directed for that. Is that correct?
It's absolutely correct. Water is its own animal and is extremely complicated in California. So absolutely we're recommending that the water lobbyists be separate from the general representation, although occasionally there is overlap. And we had it this week happen where we just made sure they were both in the loop. And, the current water lobbyists that we do have an RFQ on the street right now, but the company that's serving us currently, they know each other, and most lobbyists do, and so we just made sure that they both knew what was going on. Because in case someone asks them, "Oh, hey, we're working with Fresno on this," that they're working cooperatively with one another. So, because water is such a huge issue in California, we did feel it was important to peel that off separately.
So we have we'll have a separate lobbyist for water, and then this contract would cover essentially what things? You already mentioned an affordable housing grant. What other types of issues? Transportation. Okay.
I would say anything to do with like local government, probably local control, housing.
Transportation, I wanted to hear that. So transportation dollars. And,
absolutely.
Okay.
Anything that is an available pot of money in the state of California that we can get our hands on.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve item 1L with the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0 with member Olivier absent. Moving right along, we'll go to general administration. Item 2A, action pertaining to the general on-bill financing loan. Staff, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. Scott Crowder, Public Works Department. The item before you today has two actions. Both of them will allow the Public Works to get started to begin this citywide LED retrofit of street lights. The city has about 42,000 streetlights. This project's structured such that PG&E has a loan program for 0% financing. We retrofit LED lights and use the energy savings to pay off the loan by just paying our regular bill for an extended period of time. The way we've structured this is that $250,000 will all be used to retrofit as many lights as we can. I've been working on the project a little bit, and it looks like we'll be able to retrofit about 750 to 1,000 lights. We have, because we're using energy savings to pay off the loan, we've let the scope of the project kind of be driven by our highest powered lights and try to get that delta of 250 wattage down to about an 80 watt LED. So that's direct energy savings that the city would see. The second item is a annual appropriation resolution to the FY16 budget. I've been working on this for a couple of months, and so we're appropriating some Measure C funds to handle the city admin portion of the project. I'm here to answer any questions about this project or any other LED questions you might have, and also representatives from PG&E who've been a great partner with this project are here to answer any questions about the program or the loan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll take it out to the public. Anyone in our community wish to come forward to speak on this item, please do so. Give us name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Seeing none. Member Baines.
Thanks, Council President. Well, yeah, you can come up, Scott. I'm just asking a couple questions. Well, first of all, let me. I'm completely supportive of this. This is like really almost as no-brainer as it gets on our end, and we don't get a lot of those. So this should be a slam dunk. But I was wondering, just for my own information and for that of the public, how much are we looking to save? What's the difference between the regular lights we're using now and the LED lights, and give the public and us a general idea of what the savings amounts to?
These, because I said the scope I let the PG&E bill decide the scope for this job. So we looked for the highest wattage lights that we have in the city. This is unmetered power. I basically pay this by the power of the fixture that's there. So some of our largest intersections have some 250 watt high pressure sodium lights. And when I say watts, just equate that to energy costs every month. I'll be able to replace those 250 watt lights with probably about an 80 watt LED. So that delta is dollars. So a 250 watt light might cost us almost $20 a month. An 80 watt LED is probably, now you're getting me, I corner myself at probably about $9 a month. It's a little bit different rate structure. And these lights are located at our large intersections. At intersections, because you got vehicle versus vehicle, you got pedestrian versus vehicle conflicts. We have a higher level of light at bigger intersections. So expect to see a lot of like the Herndon Avenue. They're just bigger, 6 lanes either direction with dual turns. Those lights are on top of those traffic signals. They get pretty far away.
And I think really what I'm trying to figure out is just quantifying what the savings are. I mean, we get that their lights are brighter, and that's a good thing. But I think just what kind of savings are we talking about? Especially since the savings are going to be used to pay down the loan.
It ends up being about $60,000, $70,000 a year. It's about a 4.5 year payback on the $250,000 loan that I've got right now.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. Okay. And did you have anything you wanted to add at all? I know PG&E is such a great partner of ours, and I don't want to necessarily let this moment go by if PG&E has something they wanted to add.
Thank you. Yeah, Ann Cluse with PG&E. I just want to say that your staff has been remarkable to work with. We started, I think, in this conversation with Bruce probably about 3 years ago, and I can tell you that the approach that Scott Crowder and Scott Mosier have taken on where to start first and how to go about this, keeping in with the confines of what the city charter calls for, and I know a lot of the different budget protection acts and whatnot. So there's been a lot that's gone in probably that has made this a bigger challenge, but in a good way because the city's very protected. But I can tell you that when they looked at the city on where to start and how to implement this, they were very strategic and it was very focused and smart. So they've been great to work with, and I think what you're embarking on is a great program. So this is the start, and of course I know the overall goal is to go LED for the whole city, and they are doing strategic thinking on how to implement that. So this is a great program, glad to be here, and like I said, the city staff has been great to work with and very strategic.
No, thanks, Ann. And
Don't go far, Ann.
I just wanted to again say how grateful we are for the partnership that PG&E has with the city. You guys do a lot, keeping us informed and also helping us achieve our energy savings goals. So we appreciate that. And just what Scott mentioned a minute ago, paying back a $250,000 loan in 4.5 years. What happens is, what I want to make sure people understand that afterward, all those savings are ours going forward. So after that loan is paid off, I mean, you're talking about cash flow at that point.
Yeah, and it's a 0% interest,
0%
so
loan.
can't beat it.
Can't beat it. So anyway, great job, staff. Thank you, PG&E, for your partnership. We appreciate it.
Stay close.
Oh, and I'll make a motion to approve.
So if you have a motion by Member Baines, second by Member Brandau, and have a seat in the front. I want to talk to you a little bit more, too. So, Member Brandau, you're up.
Quick question. You started answering this question. So when you were answering Councilman Baines' questions, so where will the lights be located in the city of Fresno? I think you mentioned something like you're going to try to replace the lights that currently use the most amount of energy. So are those scattered throughout the city of Fresno, or is it more of a systematic?
They're scattered throughout the city of Fresno, and it is systematic. A lot of it, like I said, has to do with how large the intersection is, and during the intersection design, they put higher wattage lights up. A lot of it has to do with a lot of our signals and infrastructure was built by Caltrans. Caltrans uses very high wattage lights, and so we inherited them. So when I say the largest one, I'm talking Herndon Avenue. Almost every light along Herndon Avenue gets replaced because they're high wattage. Kings Canyon is another one because it used to be State Route 180. Caltrans tended to use pretty high wattage lights that we inherited when they built the freeway. Blackstone also. Blackstone will get done. We're also going to be doing the interim lights, the in-between lights on Blackstone on the BRT route. But other than that, it's, I want to say, almost 150 intersections of the 550 we have citywide that'll be touched. So it's mostly intersections, traffic signals.
All right. Well, that's kind of what I want to know. So citizens throughout the city of Fresno will see the impact, and which will be fantastic and maybe even lead to more of this project in the future.
Yeah. Part of my job has been to plan on, I said we got 42,000 lights. Probably by the time we get there, developers will be giving us new ones all the time. They'll be
right.
LEDs. We've changed the specifications. But, the retrofit part, and Councilmember Baines mentioned it, industry's looking for 50 to 60% savings on it. I'm trying to provide the same amount of light and come up with a light spec. I might be able to get to 70% because the lights are getting more efficient and as they're going. So the general concept of how we plan to do this at this point is take the savings. We currently pay about a $2.9 to $3 million power bill for street lighting every year. That'll be in the public works budget coming up here.
Right.
The commitment's got to be from this council and future councils. If you can keep me with that money, I'll take the savings and go replace more lights.
Right.
And it is the waterfall, or as I call the big boulder, you keep shouldering against it and it starts rolling downhill itself. My estimates based on what I got is it probably takes about 10 years to get through everything using something like that, provided all the money is reinvested back into the streetlights.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. And Ann, thank you very much. We do appreciate that. So I'm glad to second this motion and support it today.
Thank you, Member Soria.
Thank you, Council President. So I'm too very excited to see the opportunity to partner with PG&E. As you guys know, I'm a 100% supporter of finding ways to be more energy efficient and looking just at other ways, other alternatives. So I'm excited to see this happening in the city of Fresno. I did know in the staff report that there's in the brief explanation on the process of selecting the priority, the specific fixtures, which you already talked about to some degree, and I know that you provided us with the map. And so is the map pretty much set in stone? Have you guys, I know that you mentioned that you guys have kind of identified the priorities. Is this just a prelim?
No, as my presentation said, this kind of starts the project. I've been working on it in there. There are about 770 little spots on your map that show across the city. I guess the good news is I've picked some manufacturers. I've actually talked to some of them and started getting light costs back, and it turns out my original estimates were a little high, which is helping us. That's why your report says I'm going to do about 750 lights, and I'm saying 750 to 1,000 today, because I have to go find some other things because the lighting industry is building cheaper, more efficient lights, which is all good for us. Just like any job starts, you start with a scope, you start with an approach, and I'll be back before council with a council award. Now, at that point, it'll be set in stone, but...
Perfect. So there would be an opportunity to potentially add additional lights? Is that what you're saying?
I will be looking for additional lights, hoping to maximize energy savings.
So I'd like an opportunity to maybe meet with you guys. If we approve today, we're not approving like you said, the final...
This will be publicly bid.
Okay.
I've been working on bid specs. Matter of fact, they're out for folks to review. At that point, once it's bid, yes, it's kind of set in stone.
So I just like the opportunity to maybe sit down with you guys to figure out if there are identify some areas, because I looked in my district. There's like 1, 2, 3, maybe, and maybe one new. The triangle, one of the triangles is a new one. It says add one.
I'm sorry, that wasn't done on purpose. That just
I'm like, they
your
left
streets
me
are a little
out.
narrow in your part of town than they everywhere else. But no, you're exactly right. I can sit down with you. We've got
perfect.
some opportunities, maybe expand into those areas. And I kind of did note that when I sent the map.
Yeah, because I know that there's some neighborhoods where we've received some requests because they're a lot darker. In some, I think we've talked about the issue with the city manager. Some trees are overgrown and need to be trimmed, so that's one issue. But I think there are some other opportunities. I know in one block in the Fresno High area, there is one light in the block that is actually missing. There should have been a light post. I know that may be a bigger issue, but if we can just have an opportunity to sit down and talk about a potential opportunity.
And I'd be glad to meet with
district.
you
Perfect.
and Director Mosier. The other thing I'd want to point out to everybody is I'm keeping this project as simple as possible. This is not adding any new light poles. We might remove some that are redundant. I've actually identified some. I go, hey, we've got 2 lights doing the same thing here. Why not turn the light off when we leave the room and remove a pole? So I'm not adding any new lighting with this project, but there are other projects in the works, I think actually in your Public Works capital budget, where we'll be doing lighting enhancements.
Perfect.
My whole goal with this thing is to try to match what we've got with our lighting now. And that's how you get the savings. And, you don't take a certain wattage LED and put the same wattage LED up. You don't get any energy savings out of it. So just another point.
Perfect. And in that, you know how you said with the cost savings that we'll get from these lights, right now, once we approve the future agreement or the contract, those cost savings would just go to general fund. Is that how it would work?
The cost savings, well, it has to do with the Public Works budget, but right now all the power bills is paid with gas tax funds.
I see.
One of the issues we have with this agreement is your gas tax funds cannot be used for loan or bond payments. So there will be a little savings. We do have to come up with some other types of dollars to make these bond monthly payments for 4.5 years.
Okay.
$60,000 a year or whatever. So to answer your question, no, the savings would be in gas tax.
Okay.
And with this one now, you understand, we wouldn't see any savings till about year 4.5 because we're borrowing money to make these retrofits.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Ann, come up here, please. I want to say congratulations. As you recall, I think when I was first elected in my first term, 3.5 years ago or so, you and I sat down and started talking about LED lights, and LED lights in particular in El Dorado Park, which evolved into, as I recall, a pilot project, and it reduced the crime in that area substantially. And I appreciate we starting that dialogue 3.5 years ago, and we're continuing it. And I can't thank you enough. The residents of El Dorado Park in particular wanted me to extend their gratitude to you and PG&E for lighting up that neighborhood. And we worked with Scott and Bruce, and then we got to talk to vendors, I guess about 3 years ago, and got a great idea on what was there, what wasn't there, what was available. And the evolution's been amazing. And you've been, as usual, at the forefront, as well as PG&E. So
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0 with Member Olivier absent. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott and Bruce. Next is item 2B, actions pertaining to the design contract for the recycled water distribution system. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members, council president. My name is Kevin Norgard. I'm with the City of Fresno's Wastewater Management Division. The item before you today is an amendment to a consulting contract for expanded scope when it comes to the design of the Southwest recycled water distribution system. As you know, we've got 3 projects under construction right now. The last one is in the final stages of design, and we're putting this money is to basically put into practice the lessons that we've learned over the first 3 projects. So we're doing additional potholing, looking for utilities. We had a pump station site relocation, so we're utilizing an existing unutilized city property that the city manager's office directed us to. We had some rerouting, and the rerouting, some of it was to make sure that we can get the recycled water pipeline in faster, and we had to avoid some of the high-speed rail future stuff that isn't going to happen for a while, so we wanted to get in and out of the way before that happened. So I'll be available.
Thank you very much. Very well done. Anyone in the public would like to come forward and talk about this? This is the opportunity for a public comment. Seeing none, back to the dais. The screen is clear. I'll move to approve. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0 with members Olivier and Soria absent. Item 2C, actions pertaining to construction of the Headworks odor control system. Good morning or afternoon again.
Good afternoon again. I'm still Kevin Norgard with the Department of Public Utilities Wastewater Management Division. The items before you are for the award of a construction contract to replace 3 odor control towers in the Headworks building. These towers are basically falling apart. They're a little over 20 years old, and they're made out of fiberglass tanks, and when they're to maintain them, they take out a media inside, and people have to get in there with jackhammers and jackhammer it out. They use a lot of chemicals that get eventually dumped into the Headworks and have to get treated. The new system is going to be a lot lower maintenance. It's a biological activity process that is uses 0 chemicals. So it also provides better protection for staff in those areas. And it also meets the current air quality requirements. I will be available if there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Any public comment on this item? Please come forward. Seeing none, the screen is clear. Do I have a motion? Motion by Member Baines, seconded by Member Brand. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 5-0 with members Olivier and Soria absent. Next is item 2D, actions pertaining to construction of a pipeline. Good afternoon. One moment, Scott. You can please come. Please stay there, Scott. We're going to try to get a couple of these out, and then we'll get right to. We'll have a lot of time for DPU. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Council President and Council members. My name is Dejan Pavic. I'm with the City of Fresno Water Department.
Would you raise that up? Is that high as it'll go? Okay.
This project is for the Orange Central School, and it is construction of water loop to connect to the existing city water system. The water main will be along Cherry, Central, and east avenues connecting to the 2 points where the existing city system ends. The project is fully funded by the SRF grant loan with 0% interest. And it has been approved, the funding has been approved before, and this item is to award the contract to Dawson Malden for approximately $1.19 million, so that the construction can start as soon as possible and end the section before, in front of the school, before the new school year starts.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the public wish to come forward and discuss this item, please do so. Seeing none, back to the dais. Screen is clear. Do I have a motion? Motion by Member Baines, second by Member Quintero. All those in favor? Passes 5-0 with Member Soria and Olivier absent. Moving on to item 2E, to approve a consultant services agreement. Airports Department. Good morning, Kevin. We missed you yesterday at the State of the City.
Yeah, it was a busy meeting with airlines. So
very good.
Good afternoon, Kevin Michael, Director of Aviation. This is for the design of the eventual reconstruction of Taxiway Charlie. Taxiway Charlie is the full-length parallel taxiway on the north side or the other side of the airport. SkyWest facility, the Army, National Guard, the cargo operations all feed into this taxiway. It's one of the last major pieces of pavement we got at the airport that hasn't yet been reconstructed, so we're looking forward to that. Obviously, it will include, replacing the old quartz lighting with LED lighting, so we'll continue our efforts to reduce our energy consumption. And we anticipate actually doing the project in 2017. Available for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this item? Please come forward. Seeing none, back to the dais. Member Baines.
Hey, Kevin. Good afternoon. Hey, really quick, I'm obviously supportive of this as Councilmember Capriolio's district, so I'll let him make the motion. But I was just curious, there's a lot going on at the airport right now, obviously a lot of construction, and can you kind of give us an update? I know this kind of fits into the bigger picture, but it'd be good to just hear kind of what's all planned and where we're going.
Yeah, currently we've got the west ramp under construction. It's about an $11 million project. We should wrap that one up here by the end of the year. And we did the east ramp about 2 years ago. The west ramp was original 1960 pavement. It'll have all in-ground power, charging stations, and all kinds of things on that side of the airfield as well for the airlines. That would be Alaska Airlines and Allegiant American on that side. That's going on right now. We've got obviously an employee parking lot project going on concurrently. We should wrap that one up here late summer. That's well underway. If you haven't been out there, you can see a lot of progress. This project will start the design off. Like I said, last major piece of the airfield. It's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge out there. We finish all this work and we start again. For example, we've got a project down the pipeline to rehab the main runway. That'll be 4 or 5 years from now. We've got a project that we eventually will replace
and this is just a normal wear and tear. I mean, it's just last time we've done some of this work's been maybe 20 years or more. Is that why we're doing it now?
That's exactly right. In fact, what we do is we monitor the pavements, all the pavements at the airport, and every single year, and we create a report showing the condition and how much wear and tear has occurred over the last 12 months. And it's actually an FAA mandated requirement that we do this. So we have a pavement management plan that tells us year by year everything that needs to be replaced or rehabbed. And in the in-between time, we do our regular preventative maintenance work. So I actually have a plan that goes out 20 years that shows, and this project that we're talking about today, it's going to show up again in about 15 or so years.
Right.
But in between, we're still monitoring the progress and so forth and so on. So yeah, we actually have plans that go out. It's actually forever, but
that makes sense.
Yeah,
yeah.
They just keep. It's just the normal wear and tear of the wheel loading of the aircraft, and that's really what it is.
Right.
As they're constantly landing, they're taxiing, they're pushing, the shoving. The asphalt's like a fluid,
Sure.
Yeah.
And those planes are pretty heavy. Are there any plans? And I'm sorry, I missed your budget hearing. But are there any plans for? If we needed to expand our airport, would we have space to do that at all?
I say yes, and what you missed was and I don't think you were here, but I talked briefly previously about we're kicking off a master plan effort later this summer. In fact, I will be going to council for a consultant agreement for that effort. It's been 2005 since we did one last, and there's a lot of changes in the aviation industry since the last 10 or 12 years. But that master plan effort is going to, one, look at the airfield. 20 years down the road, do we have the capacity to accommodate what we think is going to happen in the future? My gut feeling is yes, we do. It's also going to look at the facilities, parking, terminal, gates, all these kinds of things. And my gut feeling is no, we don't have the capacity in that area. And so we're going to be focusing on everything, but in particular that area, how might the facility expand on the existing piece of property? And we have the capability to do that. We have the land to do that. Parking, once we run out of land, we just go up, which may be part of the plan, looking out at 8-10 years from now.
Sure.
So that effort will take about 18 months, and it will really define what it might look like out there. And then, of course, there's going to be milestones. When do you start planning? When do you start designing? And when do you actually start building?
Right.
And the 10-year plan I put out there in front of the council, the workshop I had last week, kind of articulated some of that effort.
No, that's great. Well, Kevin, I'm not going to make the motion. Like I said, Council President Capriello will, but I'll happily second it. The only thing is, I've been talking to Council President Capriello about this, and this asset is in his district. I'm very upset with him because he has still not got the pictures of council members in the airport. Well, I'm not sure why that is. I go in the other airports, I see who the city leadership is, and yet we don't have that. So my second of the motion is contingent upon that, of course.
Screener's clear motion to approve, and some of us are not photogenic as others, so I'm one of those. So all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0 with members Soria and Olivier absent. Going on to item, thank you, Kevin, thank you. Item 2F, actions pertaining to the Kings River Pipeline Project.
Good afternoon, Council. Martin Wendels, Project Manager for Water Division. Today we're asking Council to approve two actions. One is to approve the agreement for road repairs, or repair for county roads along the alignment of the raw water pipeline for the Kings River. And the second is to approve the addendum to the county road encroachment permit. Staff will be here.
Thank you.
Questions, sir.
Great presentation. Out to the public. Anyone in the public wish to comment on this, please come forward. Seeing none, back to the dais. Screen is clear. I'll make a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second by Member Brand. Thank you. All those in favor? Passes 5-0 with members 6-0 with Member Olivier absent. Thank you. Item 2G, amending the Better Business Act. I understand we might want to table that action today. Is that no?
We're going to let Claudia make her presentation, and then we'll let the council make a determination as to what they want to do with this.
Thank you.
Particular item.
Good afternoon, Council. Claudia Reese with the Mayor and City Manager's Office. The item before you is amending the Better Business Act to add an exception for the city when it serves as a co-applicant for applications to the state for funds. As many of you know, the Cap and Trade program is out there to fund affordable housing projects. And because of the deadlines set forth by the state, we think that an exception should be allowed to meet those deadlines so that we can be co-applicants for these projects. And the exception will be to allow the city to be a co-applicant, but also add safeguards, and those safeguards will be to indemnify the city for any damages incurred by the city due to the developer's failure to complete the project, and also require a performance bond of at least 110% of the estimated construction costs. And the city will also be serving as a fiscal agent in these projects. So the money will come to the city, and the city will disperse those funds based on performance.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anyone in the public wish to comment on this? This is the opportunity. Seeing none, back to the dais. Member Brand.
I want to thank Claudia for spending the time with me and explaining the amendment. This amendment basically adds 4% onto the scoring system for the applicants, but in my opinion, I don't think the 4% really, I haven't seen any cases where that would have either made or broke the application. And there's other ways to make up the 4% through financial participation. Here's the challenge. You know, this was you're naming the city as a co-obligee on a bond, and there's provisions like the surety bond for 110%. But I've worked with surety bonds, and you have to actually go. I can guarantee you there'll be litigation. They'll never willingly, here's your check, take it over. It never works that way. The other thing that can happen too, and particularly in a large project, you may start out at 10 million or 20 million or 30 million. Somebody made some mistakes along the way. They may underbid it. The city comes in. We successfully work with the surety bond agent. Then we take over a project that was budgeted at 20 million, and now it's at 30 million. And then the city's then going to be, and again, this may not be obvious, or they may be remote chances, but being in business, the construction business for a number of years, I've seen these things actually happen. And so there's no guarantee to simply have the surety bond. And the same thing for mechanics liens. There's that would be a part of the process too. And we have to look any further than the Met Museum to remember what happened in the Met Museum when there was nobody doing on the cash draws, nobody verifying what was going on. It went way over budget, and there were mechanics liens that the city ultimately ended up inheriting. Now this has the city as a fiscal agent for the disbursement of funds during the construction process, which is fine, but although I would say the city should actually subcontract to a vendor, because what banks do the same thing. They get consultants that are construction experts that would do inspections on progress payments, like on the rough plumbing, rough electrical, and so on, and are proper. And the other thing that we're really not clear, and this is probably the biggest one, when Claudia and I discussed this, is once the project is completed, there's covenants that run with the the land that on the affordable housing covenants. And if the applicant somehow does not meet those covenants, does that burden or liability fall back on the city? And that's something that I don't think anybody has the answer for right now. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of cities are basically holding back on this right now because of the potential liability on the covenants of affordable housing. So I'd like to see us wait and see what develops, maybe over the next year, and maybe revisit this. I'm not necessarily against it, but I think right now, until we get some answers, I could not support it like it is right now. I'd like to see it come back maybe at a later date, later in the year. So that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Brand. So are you asking to table it or to proceed with a vote today? Or
I would recommend that we table it and reevaluate and look and see what's going on down the state later this year, how other cities are trying to participate and what problems, if any, they have. And again, there may be a version that would work, but I think we should hold off right now. And my motion would be to table the item indefinitely until we figure out what's going to go on.
Very good, thank you. City Attorney, do we need a second on a motion to table this item?
Either a motion and a second, or by consensus of the council.
Okay. Second by Member Brandow. Would that necessitate further discussion, or do we vote now? Or
I'm up.
I see that.
It allows for further discussion, yes.
I'm sorry.
Just because there's a motion to table doesn't mean you can't discuss it further.
Very good. Okay, Member Soria.
Thank you. Claudia, if you could just answer a couple questions. So if we don't do this, what are the implications of delaying this or waiting 1 year? I am assuming that there are some projects in the pipeline. So what does this mean for those projects, and what projects are they? Can you explain?
So actually the item that I'm going to speak on in actually a few minutes is going to be for a project, the Cesar Chavez Foundation. They've requested for us to be co-applicants, and that application is due on Monday. So if this does not move forward, then we cannot be co-applicants with that developer.
And so what would the project be?
Well,
the Cesar
they
Chavez?
would not get the 4 points for having a joint application with the municipality.
And so do we see other projects in the pipeline that could potentially face the same issue?
Only 3 projects made it past concept in Fresno, Van Ness and Stanislaus, who did not request that we be co-applicants, South Stadium that you guys are all familiar with, and this is the third one, Cesar Chavez.
But this is the only one that has requested us to be co-applicant?
And South Stadium.
Oh, and South Stadium. So if we don't pass this today, the South Stadium project won't be moving forward?
That project was
with us as co-applicant.
That project was sent out to RFP, so that doesn't fall under the restrictions for the BBA.
I see.
And if I could, to differentiate between the two, the South Stadium is only, we're only responsible for the off-site improvements, not the construction of the actual facility.
Housing portion.
Yeah, the housing portion. We're just doing the off-sites. This, they're asking us to co-sign on the entire project.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Member Quintero.
I guess that's a question I was going to ask city manager or city attorney regarding the 2I on the actions pertaining to the Cesar Chavez Foundation project. So what effect would that have on this? I mean, or
what you could do, the council could do, is that it could simply, let me look at the way it's read. You could approve or just deny the co-application for the Cesar Chavez project, but direct staff to at least amend the existing DD&A to include the impact fee waiver of $648,000.
okay, and I may be jumping ahead because of the Cesar Chavez project, because I've got some questions on that, and I don't know if we approve or disapprove the motion that's on the floor now, if that would have an effect on the overall project.
It would. If you table or disapprove the item now, it would make the Cesar Chavez application, the part in which they're actually requesting us to be the co-applicant, it would make that a moot point, which is why I would suggest that if that's going to be the consensus of the council, that at a minimum that you take a motion to have staff amend the existing DD&A to include the provision that would provide for impact fee waivers.
So we would still be able to move forward on the Chavez project?
And we would still be providing the impact fee waiver. We would just amend the DD&A. And the what? Yeah, and donating the property as we had already done before.
Okay. And I guess I've got one question for the person from the project, the Cesar Chavez project. Alfredo, I'm trying not to mix things up, but it's still.
Hi, I'm Alfredo Smoktowicz with the Cesar Chavez Foundation. I think it'd be helpful maybe for me to clear up some points as I heard the question from Councilman Brand with respect to the indemnification from us to the city, as well as the process. The reason we requested the co-applicant status is simply to improve our chances for the funding. There are additional 4 points, and even though you never know in terms of scoring how people are going to do or not do, we do know that given the amount of funds that are available and the amount of applicants that are still competing for those funds, every point seems to matter, and we want to put forth the strongest application we can. Now, with respect to the city's obligations, we're going to indemnify the whole project. We are going to be working with private investors, construction lenders, who will have all those experts that you mentioned with respect to draw process, as well as the city. We have agreed to also fund a position at the city for your fiscal agent to also be part of that process to monitor and ensure that the progress of the project is meeting everyone's expectations and that there are no issues with respect to cost overruns or what have you. In the event of those cost overruns, we have a contingency as well as corporate guarantees from our organization to cover all that, way ahead of anything from the city. So we put in significant guarantees, and again, the main purpose here is to put forth the strongest, most competitive application for funding so we can get the project funded. And I would hate to see a situation where we lost by 4 points and not be able to move the project forward.
Tell him what you tell him that, because he was addressing you. So.
Thank you for the explanation. There's just a lot of uncertainties out there, and the sheer, volume or amount of the money involved. And I'm willing to continue discussions, but on this deal, so it's not indefinite. So if we have a meeting maybe in the near future, I'd be glad to talk to you. But
oh, absolutely.
I just know that on indemnifications and so on, that they help, but there's nothing that's 100%. If this was a smaller amount, it would be less of an issue, but there's potentially a lot of money. And I do realize you're trying to be as competitive as you can on the deal. So I certainly understand that portion, but I'll be willing to talk, down the road. And but today I'm not willing to say, I'm okay, I'll take the gamble with it.
May I make a suggestion? Because I'm not absolutely clear on the application, how it treats. I believe we requested the co-applicant status again to get those 4 additional points. However, what I understood from the other project that they asked for the similar thing, but you guys are only doing that on the infrastructure. I'd be very happy with that too if it still achieves the points.
Excuse me, I need to clarify that. The other application, the South Stadium application, we are co-applicants on that project. But the difference is that's a $5.3 million project, of which about $1.5 million of that are off-site improvements that the city's making, and the financing for that is conventional financing, and it also does not impact the Better Business Act the way that it's written today. So there would be no impact from it related to the Better Business Act. No amended motion.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so I guess with the Councilmember Brand would still want to continue it. I just don't know where it puts you.
Well, the application is due on Monday, so unfortunately, we would lose those points. And then we hopefully would still be competitive, but if not, it would most likely end this project.
So you'd still move forward with the application on Monday?
Yeah, irrespective, we're going to move forward. Again, the goal is to put forth the
You're
strongest
just
application.
-4.
Right.
You'd just be -4.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Correct. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome, Mr. Baines. Member Baines.
Thank you, Council President. This raises some interesting questions in my head. I'm not sure I need to ask you any just yet,
okay.
But I don't want you to just have to stand there while I talk. So.
Oh, no problem.
But let me see if I can clarify. Councilmember Brand, help me understand. Is your reservation because of? Explain to me precisely what your reservation is.
In less than 2 minutes and 60 seconds.
However long you need to take, I'm fine.
Well, on surety bonds, which is it's good, but everyone I've ever been involved in, they almost always end up in litigation. No insurance company says, "Oh, I'm sorry, here's your check for 110%." There's always, they're going to be contentious, and it may not even happen, but I've seen it happen before. And when they do happen, sometimes, particularly in a large project, costs can escalate. Sometimes it came in, people wanted to make it work, and again, I'm giving you hypotheticals, but maybe it was $5 million higher, then the city then comes in and assumes that liability to complete the project. Now, that may be remote, but it's definitely a possibility.
Now, let me ask this. In the staff's proposal, they would agree to essentially indemnify us. Am I understanding that right? To where if in fact the cost overruns and what have you, as you described, happen, we would not be on the hook for that? Am I understanding that correctly? And Claudia, I don't know if you want to come back up and provide any clarification, because I can understand Councilmember Brand's hesitation, but at the same time, we're asking them specifically to indemnify us from this eventuality, right?
I think I'll defer to the city attorney on that.
Okay, whoever needs the answer.
Yes, the contract, if we approve the co-applicant agreement, it would require full indemnification. So that's just subject to whether or not they would have the money to indemnify us.
So if we're indemnified, then the scenario that Councilmember Brand is speaking of is are we still at risk, or?
There would still be some risk. Whether or not we would prevail on the indemnification and they would actually have the ability to pay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
There would be the risk of whether or not we would prevail on indemnification and if CCF would have the ability to pay.
What do you mean if we would prevail on the indemnification?
If we had to sue them for indemnification.
Is there, are you thinking of scenarios where we would not prevail if they indemnify us?
I don't know, but litigation always has. You ask, is there any risk? Yes, there is some risk.
Okay, well, we indemnify folks all the time. So have we ever not prevailed on an indemnification? I know we had a developer asking us to withdraw indemnification, but we don't have to if we...
No, this would be the developer indemnifying the city if the project failed.
Okay. So I guess, Councilman Brown, I'm still a little, so with that explanation, I'm a little curious as to what your reservation is if we have indemnification.
Well, let's assume we called it B&B Enterprises was the developer.
We'll assume that.
I like that, right? And we're going to indemnify the city. But if we're financially insolvent for one reason or another, then guess what? It's going to go back on the city. So it's the ability for that applicant to be whole and have the financial resources, and correct me if I'm wrong, city attorney, to indemnify, and it's also withstanding the legal challenge. Just because it's in a contract doesn't mean it's automatically going to be it's going to prevail. So,
and I can appreciate that.
And then there's a second element to it too, and the second element was once the project's completed, because we discussed it with Claudia and Danielle, is the city off the hook? Once the construction is done, or is there potentially a lingering liability on like affordable housing covenants? If the applicant 5 years from now doesn't do what they're supposed to do, would then it fall back on the city? And nobody at least gave me a clear answer. Other cities like Los Angeles are not doing this. Am I right, Claudia? They're having the same attitude we are. They're kind of holding back and seeing how this, because this is a relatively new program, correct? So I'm simply saying I'm sorry it's impacting your project, but let's take a step back as a city and let's see how this thing unfolds. And it may work out fine, but there's some question marks, at least in my mind, and I'm not saying there's a 90% probability that they're going to happen, but by the sheer size of this project and the uncertainties out there, and again, maybe I'm overstating it, but they're real potential liabilities.
Okay, so how large is the project? Remind me again. I know we're waiving like $635,000 in developer impact fees.
So the project itself is $31.6 million, I believe.
31.6
But the
million?
request is $15.5 million.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'd like to clarify on that as well. It's in excess of $31 million project. $15 million of it are the cap and trade funds. The balance is tax credits, as well as the city donating property and the city making the infrastructure, incentive available to them. The amount that the developer will have into this project, I believe, is approximately $4 million, and $2 million of that is developer fee. So that's just the full impact of the financing.
Okay. How long has this project been in the pipeline? I know we've been talking about this for, I feel like, at least since I've been here.
I believe almost 3.5 years.
Okay.
Putting the financing together.
Okay.
And again, I respect all the discussion. I think these are just very good points here. When you evaluate risk, there's always risk to everything. Stepping outside
I get that.
No. And so I just want to be very clear. We have a construction contingency that's almost $1 million. You have our corporate indemnification to the city as well as our balance sheet to protect the city in the event that we go through all that and we don't have the resources to close that gap. Which, by the way, we're an organization that's been around for 60 years. We have never pulled a surety bond. We have never had an issue with respect to completing construction on time. If there have been budget overruns, we have covered them with our own resources.
Okay.
So from that perspective, historically, that's not been an issue. But again, to respect Councilman Brand, because he's right. I mean, is there risk? There always is risk.
Sure.
On top of this, again, is the surety bond. So if we fail, if we go through the contingency, if we fail to put our own funds into the deal and the surety bond gets into litigation, That is, you'd have to go through all of those steps before you get to the city.
Okay, thank you. Renee, help me understand. Did you have? Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Cap. I'm not done yet. Renee or Bruce or whomever, help me understand what the difference is between what we did with South Stadium and what's being proposed for this project. I'm a little unclear on what the actual difference is.
Okay, so with South Stadium, we're looking at a project that's $5.3 million, but of that $5.3 million, about $1.5 million of it or so is for the off-site improvements that the city has. That's our piece.
And
of
I guess
the
what I'm
project.
asking is, I mean, what is the relationship difference? Not necessarily the dollars or what have you. What's the relationship difference that we would have with what is being asked of us in a later item on Cesar Chavez project as to what we did with South Stadium?
From what I understand, the South Stadium project would not require us to make any exceptions to the Better Business Act, where in this case we're specifically asking to change the rules of the Better Business Act so that we could still be co-applicants with the Cesar Chavez or future projects like those that come forward.
Okay. So really there's not a relationship difference. We were co-applicants with them. It just didn't, because of the dollar amount, and didn't trigger the Better Business Act. Is that kind of how I'm understanding it?
The Better Business Act was not triggered on South Stadium because there's an exception in the Better Business Act that for projects that go out to RFP. And that one did go out to RFP.
Okay. You know, in light of that, thank you, everyone, for indulging my questions. In light of that, I'm not exactly sure that the risk that we're taking on this, other than the fact that the project is larger, it seems like we've done this in the past, where we have tried to work with a developer to bring a project to fruition, and sometimes we've done that through partnership. If we are not certain about the solvency of the company, that's one thing, which we need to figure that piece out. But if we're just afraid of the risk, I don't know if that's enough for me to not still want to partner with this entity, seeing as how we've done that in the past. And if contractually, City Attorney, do you feel confident that we would have the proper protections in place that we would have with any other contract?
If this exception to the BBA were approved with the requirements to have the 110% surety bond, additionally that the city holds the money as the fiscal agent and pays it out as the project is completed, along with what would be in the amendment to the development agreement, that's all we could do contractually to protect the city.
Right, and we take a lot of risk with them every day. Councilmember Quintero, what are your thoughts on this? Although this exception would be specifically for this project in your district.
Well, I can tell you by background, we work very, very closely with the foundation and also with city staff. And one of the things that I've gone over with staff is that I want assurances that the way that this is written up, that the city is protected. That's what we're elected to do.
Are you in favor of this amendment to the Better Business?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, in supporting the foundation's proposal, yes. And right. I've met with, like I said, with staff, with Renee, with the city attorney, and Claudia, and we've had numerous meetings over the past 3 years on, and it's changed. It's changed a lot, but I think this is about as good as it's going to get.
Okay.
And I have additional questions.
Okay. So I'll say this and wrap it up so my president doesn't get upset with me. I know how those points matter. 4 points is a lot, actually. It could be the difference between winning and losing, quite frankly. These things come down to the tiebreakers a lot of times, and 3 or 4 points do make a big difference on a project. So I'm inclined to support staff's recommendation to allow this exception, or if even if it were a one-time exception or what have you, I would hate to pick and choose winners. If we're going to do this for other developers, then I think we should try to find a way to do it for this one, especially for a project that's been in the pipeline for so long. Thank you.
Excuse me, and the other thing too is that the foundation has a track record here in Fresno as well for how many projects do you have here? 4, 5? This would be their 5th project here, and so thank you.
Before we go much farther, Scott, I think the way this is going, could you guys come back at 3:30? I apologize for that. My watch broke apparently, so thank you. Thank you for your indulgence. Yeah.
So if I could, Council President, I think it might, unfortunately, Councilmember Bain stepped away. But Danielle, I'm going to ask you to come up because I think it might be important to kind of clarify the level of risk or responsibility that comes with South Stadium versus this project.
Sure.
South Stadium, as I understand, is primarily infrastructure, water, things, sewer, things like that. That's already old infrastructure that needs to be replaced. Some of it, and another 2-point-some million, is associated with streetscape.
Right.
Related. So maybe if you could, for the council, because
Yeah.
I will tell you the level of risk, and I get the level of risk. And I also understand the Councilmember Baines' comment that we've done this before, and we have done this before. And the outcome hasn't been all that great, and nothing against the Cesar Chavez Foundation. But we have co-signed on a $15 million note, and it didn't work out real well. So some of this may be coming from been there, done that, and again, it's nothing against the Cesar Chavez. And we brought this forward because they requested us to do this for this discussion. But Danielle, if you could kind of walk people through what the difference is and what they're asking versus what we did with South Stadium.
Sure.
That would probably be helpful for the
Yeah,
for the council.
absolutely. Happy to do that. Danielle Bergstrom, Mayor and City Manager's Office. So the South Stadium project, the housing project itself, which is the 51-unit mixed-use project and 11 units of affordable housing, that piece is only part of the whole South Stadium project, which also includes streetscape improvement along Inyo and Van Ness in the project area. So the way that the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program works is you fund both housing and transportation improvements together, which is why they really are sort of pushing this joint applicant framework, because they like to see the cooperation between public agencies who administer the transportation improvements together with housing developers. That being said, the South Stadium project is very different from the Cesar Chavez Foundation project in that their total funding request of the state for HSC funds is about $5.3 million, roughly. Of that 5.3, only 1.2 is basically set aside for the housing development itself. It's a loan from the state Department of Housing and Community Development. And then there's another just under $2 million that goes for what they call housing-related infrastructure. That money will also go directly to the developer, and that's upgrading the size of the water pipe in Home Run Alley, and it's building parking, and it's site sort of demolition and excavation and that sort of thing. The rest of the funding, around $3 million roughly, is for the streetscape improvements. So this is, from the total perspective of the grant, more of the money is going to the city than to the developer.
No. Honestly, it doesn't help me because I'm a little confused, and I guess I'll just take the mic back. But I'm a little confused because this is your staff's recommendation. Whose recommendation is this?
No, if you read the staff report,
It says City Manager's Office.
It's the City Manager's Office. We're bringing this forward for your because the developer asked us to. So we don't have a recommend. In fact, I will tell you that if you ask my professional recommendation, I agree with the council member Brand. I would table the item or just wait to see what other. And I understand it's 4 points, but given the level of risk associated with this one, I would professionally recommend the council either table or reject the item.
Well, it's awfully hard when you say a professional recommendation. Shoot, man.
I
you
over for that one.
Threw that one down, didn't you?
Yeah, I know.
Well, and the respect I have for you and your professional recommendations, but I think that I'm not sure anything would change if we waited. What would we do differently? I don't hear what we would do differently with this per se. That it sounds like we can't do anything more contractually.
Other than my recommendation would be to give them the impact fee waiver,
Yeah, we're giving them, you did recommend that.
I don't know if I would be, I would not recommend that you would move ahead with the amendment to the Better Business Act or the request to be co-applicant.
Could we do a one-time exception to the Better Business Act?
I don't think you do one time. That's a
Well,
call.
we
you could always.
We could, if someone recommended.
I guess again.
All right. Let me just tell you, and I'll close down with my comments here, because I did get a chance to listen to some of the discussion in the back. My only concern is that, well, not only, is that it seems as though contractually, and we've done everything we can to protect the liability of the city, which is all we can do. We do that every time throughout dozens of contracts that we sign. It seems as though we've decided on this one that whatever our contractual protections aren't yet enough. So if we start taking an approach like that, then how will we ever approve anything if we're not convinced that we have drafted the proper contractual protections? I mean, theoretically, we could say that, no project is contractually tight enough, because every project will have some level of liability despite the contractual protection. So I can't necessarily say that I think that we would come back with anything different, other than we would just ensure that this project missed, that we would not be a co-applicant. We would ensure that they would lose 4 points and thereby potentially lose out on the opportunity for the grant. So I'm not hearing a real convincing reason why we should not do this, other than the size of the project.
Well, there is the size of the project. The city's being asked to put $15 million at risk when the developer has $2 million of risk. So that is something for consideration. But there are safeguards to back that. But those are not 100%.
Yeah, and I get you, Renee, and the truth of the matter is, if nothing we ever do will be 100%.
Yeah. And so Councilmember Baines, we've shared with you our thoughts, and you've shared with us. So that's why we debate these things.
Yeah. So no. You get it.
You're done.
I'm done. I got it.
Member Soria.
So, couple things. I know that we're on the discussion of the exception to the Better Business Act, but I think that there's merit in looking at the type of also project that we're talking about. We live in a city where the issue of affordable housing is huge, and this project is going to provide affordable housing for 89 families, 46 senior units, and I think that there is merit to really for us to consider. And I think when we're talking about the relationship in terms of the risk, we're dealing with the Cesar Chavez Foundation. We're not dealing with multi-million-dollar developers. And the city usually bends over backwards for many of our developers here to waive impact fees and to see such project where, we can't figure out something. We've actually, I think, to the comments made, we've taken every step in terms of providing language to ensure that we cover the city's liability. I think another thing that we can do is also we have the Construction Oversight Board, making sure that we have this oversight board, which was created to ensure that the project is moving forward and that we keep a closer eye. But I think that there is merit to also the type of project that we're dealing with here today. I know that we're talking about the exception, but the exception is really important for this project to be able to garner the sufficient points to actually get the funding to create the affordable housing that we need in this community. That's a huge issue. And we're not talking about a museum. We're not talking about a stadium. We're talking about affordable housing. That's the type of project that this would be. And the same issue in terms of oversight about who's going to make sure that these developers meet these covenants. Well, who's going to make sure that the south of the stadium keeps their covenant? Are we going to go monitor and make sure that the whatever 10% units that they've included as part of the covenant, that they're meeting that covenant. I don't know if we're providing that same oversight. So I think we should be looking and be equitable. I think there's an issue of being equitable amongst the different projects that are coming before us. And so maybe just because someone can't show that they have millions and millions of dollars to not put the city at risk, even though we can take the precautionary measures to protect us, that we really give strong consideration to the type of project that we're looking. So I'm not convinced by the argument on the other side. I think that it merits that we strongly consider making an exception, and I think that the project in the following item definitely has merit as we face a strong lack of affordable housing shortage here in our community. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Member Brand.
Let me first say, I know the Cesar Chavez Foundation has a great reputation, so that has nothing to do with the quality of housing and your success in not only Fresno, but across the state of California. But there is as was explained, a significant difference between what we're doing here today and what went on with the South Stadium project. And whenever you set a precedent, this is you're going down a line, you're going on a slippery slope. And to me, the size and scope of the project, the impact on the project, and I appreciate, the affordable housing is a consideration, but I can tell you, using history, when the Met Museum was being discussed, it was, we're going to have a great amenity, it's downtown, the kids are going to see dinosaurs. How can you not love this? And it was presented in a way, and I remember the Granite Park, I read the staff report. There is no general fund risk, 100%. Yet, a year later, we assume the obligation. And I'm not making the comparison because I realize there's a big difference in what you guys do, but there's a history of assurances and great things and all the contribution it makes to the community. But in the end, we've got to be, sound fiscal stewards that watch over the city of Fresno. And by making mistakes, they have an impact on future projects. And we're talking about a couple $1 million versus $15 million. So this asks the city to be the co-obligee on a bond. Is that correct, City Manager? That's a 30-year bond? So we're not talking about just the construction. You're talking about for 30 years. And again, I realize this, you have a good track record, but things happen. And for 30 years, you're asking the city to have its name on the line as a co-obligee in the event anything happens, no matter how remote. And that's a big difference between a one-time, we're going to give a developer an abatement on a development impact fee or site improvements versus a 30-year obligation. And I'm not saying we can't find a solution down the road, but the fact that most major cities in California have not did this, have not followed up, means we're not the only ones that are having our reservations on going forward. I think maybe sometimes, sorry it's affecting your timing, that there might be a way to resolve this issue. And I understand, I really understand the compelling reasons on the other side and all the good it does, but in the end, we've got to be responsible to the people that elect us, and there's just too much unknown, and it's a new program, and again, it's not just a one-time, it's a 30-year obligation, so.
Well, I want to be clear. I'm multitasking. It's a bad habit of mine. We are on the hook while during construction, there's a surety bond for the construction, so in the event that something happens during the construction, then that's where our risk would be. But your point was well taken. If it was a $31 million project and there are cost overruns and we end up with a $40 million project, we're going to have that risk. So there are some there's some similarities to some of the things that we've had before where we've been a co-applicant on projects that ended up going over, and whether we had a surety or not, we ended up being the ones with that liability.
Thanks for the clarification. Anyway, thank you, Council President.
Excuse me, Member Soria. Okay. We have a motion and a second to table this. All those in favor of tabling, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. So it's a 3-3 split. The result would be what, City Attorney?
So 3-3 means that the motion to table fails. So the motion is still active right now, or the item is still active. Somebody can make a motion to approve the item at this point, if they choose to.
I'll make a motion to deny the item.
We have a motion. And is it, that's a little unusual, to make a motion to deny City Attorney?
Yeah, he can make the motion any way he wants to.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second to deny this moment. All those in favor of denying it, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 3-3 split again. Mr. Referee?
So that would mean the motion to deny has failed. You still have not approved the item, though.
Okay.
So that means there's no action on the item then, correct?
At this point, that's correct.
So may I make a suggestion that we just, if there's going to be no action on the item, then obviously we're going to have to continue the item? City Attorney, I mean, if there's no action either way.
A 3-3 means there was no action taken effectively.
Okay. All right. So is there a need to continue
Well, I
this?
understand. The practical reality is that without any action today, the project will not move forward with the city as co-applicant.
So I think that means that, okay. Okay, on a procedural note, then we would have to continue item 2G and 2I.
2J is the related item. That could go forward, but you would only be able to consider the impact fee waiver portion of it.
Okay, so then we'll continue. Yes, Member Quintero.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I'd like to be acknowledged, and I wanted to call up Ms. Reese, I think, for some additional comments.
Since we voted on it, is it still subject to discussion?
That's within the council president's discretion.
Very good. Member Quintero.
I'd like to call up Ms. Reese, please. Did you have some additional comments?
Well, I just wanted to clarify that if the Better Business Act is not amended, then the first two actions on the second item will not be able to move forward, but we still have to address the third action item, which is the impact fee waiver. And I don't know if you want to hear that item now, since they're related.
Apparently, we'll do them one at a time. City
Well,
Attorney.
there was no action on the Better Business Act amendment, so you may as well just go ahead and take up 2J, except legally you would not be able to consider items 1 and 2. You could consider item 3 under 2J, which is the impact fee waiver.
Okay, we'll move on to item 2J, the third element of that process. Claudia, you're up.
Okay, so the item before you is a request for an impact fee waiver in the amount of $635,519.55. And the reason for the request is that the project is not eligible under any of our impact fee waiver programs, and so we are requesting that we waive this fee to allow this application to be more competitive. And it's considered an enforceable funding commitment under the guidelines of AHSC.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the public that wish to give us an opinion on this item? Please come forward. Seeing none. Assistant City Manager.
Also on item J, we would also be asking if we're moving forward with action on that the DD&A for them to donate back the properties to make this project work, that we would be able to work with the city attorney's office to make sure that language gets in there and gets approved today as well.
Okay. After taking it out to the public with no response, we'll go to the dais, and that's Member Baines.
If you can come, are you want to comment on this item? Okay. Yes, come on up. I'll call her up.
I just want to say, Mary Esther Correa, 3407 East Iowa, Fresno, California. You know, I've been listening, you know, this is where Cesar Chavez started. This is the San Joaquin Valley where he started all his challenges and all this hard work, and his wife just passed away, so I think this would be a plus for the San Joaquin Valley because the whole United States knows about Cesar Chavez and his works, and I think it would be really beneficial for you to go forward with this project because there's a lot of Hispanics and a lot of accolades will come to you, and I think that the city would come up and step up to see this project completed, and it would be very, very beneficial to our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the public wish to come forward?
No, I had called her up.
Thank you.
Council President. Quick question, and I don't know if Renee's the right one to answer this question, but with the impact fee waivers, does that count as a city contribution as far as the way they're going to score the applications? Okay. Okay, that was my question. So they get some credit from us waiving the development impact fees,
as well as the donation of
land. Okay. Councilmember Quintero, I know this is your district, so if you make a motion, I'll second it.
Thank you. I still needed a clarification from the Assistant City Manager, Renee Smith, on some language to put in there to...
Yeah, on the donation of the property, part of the project, in order to meet the densities and be competitive, we will need to amend the DD&A regarding they're actually going to donate back to the city a small portion of property, and that they will continue to maintain in perpetuity, but the size of the project, the land space is a little bit smaller, and that helps them to be competitive. And so what we're asking is that council make a motion to allow for staff to work with the city attorney to amend that part of the DD&A.
Okay.
Yeah, we respectfully request to allow that to move forward. I understand the concerns, but we want the application to move forward, and without the amended DDA, you're effectively killing the project today. So we need 2 and 3, and we'll go in with less points and cross our fingers.
But what we're doing is protecting the city.
Now, what we're doing is that we are like we have with some other projects. We are, as Claudia pointed out, this project it's not a mixed use. If it had been mixed use along BRT, we wouldn't be here today because it would fall under the Economic Development Act. But because this is a 100% housing project, it doesn't qualify under the recently adopted Economic Expansion Act. So granting the impact fees is consistent with our strategy towards infill, and then the donation of land is also consistent with our infill strategies. So amending the DD&A to provide for the impact fee will help their application. Donating the land also counts towards that application. The reason we'll have to come back and subsequently amend the DD&A is because if you look at the size of the land and the number of units, they don't hit the density threshold they need to. So you literally got to take a little bit off the land, and in order for, and we can do that through the DD&A, we'll amend the map or whatever, in order for them to hit the density threshold.
And that would work perfectly, yes.
Okay. Then, City Attorney, that... You understand all that,
yes.
right?
That's permissible, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you can approve 2 and 3 to the extent that 2 is approving the land donation.
Right? Okay. So we're all covered?
Yes.
Pretty much. Okay, motion to approve. Thank you, Mr. Baines. Hold on.
I have a motion by Member Quintero, second by Member Baines. Is there any further comment? I think we've commented about as much as we can comment, but All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? What was the count? 6-0? Thank you very much. Okay. I think the only item left is item 6, or strike that, 2I. Okay. You know, I couldn't find 2J on my agenda, and now we're on 2I, which is really H, which I thought was taken off calendar, so I apologize for that. We had a technical difficulty.
Good afternoon, Council. Jim Shad with the Department of Transportation. This, I hope, is a simple item. We are asking or recommending the Council to approve a resolution that authorizes us to allow our contractor for our CNG station upgrade to use subcontractors. The project started, it's a design-build contract that started a couple years ago. Since then, business conditions have changed, and Clean Energy would like to use a subcontractor to perform the construction work. We have vetted the main subcontractor and as well as the subs to that sub, and are recommending to go forward with that.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone in the public wish to come forward and discuss this matter, please do so now. Seeing none, back to the dais. The screen is clear. I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Member Brand. All those in favor? Passes 5-0 with members Olivier and Baines absent. Next is item 2H. Aye. Sorry for the confusion, Jeff. Thanks for being patient.
Oh, that's quite all right. Jeff Cardell, Director of Personnel Services. We're here today because we are recommending an amendment to the annual appropriation resolution in the amount of $2,100,000 from the general fund to the workers' compensation fund. And the reason for that is because we have had claims expenses this year well beyond the budget that has been approved previously by council. That's driven in large part by one particular claim as well as an increase in medical and disability costs. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your patience again.
Sure.
Anyone in the public want to comment on this item, please come forward. Seeing none, the screen is clear. I'll make a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second? Second by Member Brand. Member Sawyer.
I just had a quick question. You said 2,100,000? That's what you said, but I see 2
I'm
million.
sorry, 2 million. Yes, it is what I said. To correct that, it's 2,210,000. I apologize.
So, and you're asking us today to appropriate the funds. So we already had, I guess, allocated them in this last budget cycle?
We had already approved a budget for the workers' compensation fund. It's a little over $13 million. And we are in need of an additional $2.210 million.
Where is that money coming from?
That's coming from the general fund, and I think, Jane, if you could help me with that, that would be great.
So this is carryover general fund money?
No, it isn't. Actually, what I identified last week when we did the general fund overview is that I was anticipating that additional revenues would come in both of the line items that are a part of this resolution. All this is doing is acknowledging those estimates so that now instead when I report to the council that real secured revenues came in over budget, now I will say real secured revenues came in on budget. That's all that's doing because we've already received the revenue, but we need to go through this action in order to appropriate it so that we can pay the workers' comp bills. Okay. So we've already got the money, and it's already and the expense of this 2.2 is in the FY16 estimates for the general fund. So I've already assumed that we are going to pay these bills and that we've already received the revenue. This is simply a housekeeping item to acknowledge that. That's all that it is.
Okay, thank you.
Screen is clear. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Those opposed? Passes 5-2 with members Olivier and Baines absent. At this time, we're going to go quickly to unscheduled communication, and I have to step out, so Vice President Quintero will take over for a while.
Okay, for unscheduled oral communications, Mary Esther Correa on water and sewer.
First of all, I just want to thank you all for helping me, whoever it was that you all came together. We worked together, and my water got torn down this afternoon. But, muchas gracias, mahalo, and thank you very much for whoever helped, and we got it together and got this done. But I complied. They asked me to give $200 and to sign the contract, and the contract is outrageous. They're blackmailing me. And I want to read, there's $723 that they're going to reverse the amount after I pay my payments. And if I miss one, I want to read to the sentence. If your payment is mailed rather than brought into the office and it doesn't reach the office by the agreement due date, you run the risk of your water being turned off. And you know what? I've been paying and paying, and I worked very hard, and I've asked for what does all these accolades mean, what does the abbreviations, and nobody gives me no answers. Now there's a bill here. It says reverse amount 456, reverse amount 267. After I finish paying, then they will reverse. I'm asking to give me explanations what all these charges are for, and I don't mind paying. I do mind, but I have to have my water turned on. I'm being blackmailed, and I don't have any explanations why I'm being charged $720 and to reverse amount after I finish paying 2 years or a year and a half. And then, you know what? I think maybe this is outrageous. So I'm just rebuttaling this, and I'm going to send a copy to all of you because I think this. First, I'm being blackmailed, and then Brian Reams is scamming me, and he's scammed other senior citizens, and I'm protesting this, and I'm going to keep on keeping on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Why don't you come back and talk to us about code enforcement? Code enforcement? You signed another card on code enforcement, too.
Well, I'll just make a brief statement. Code enforcement, for the past 4 or 5, since 2011, I come, and this is my home, and I fix, and I repair, and I rent one, thinking I'm going to get some money to pay the mortgage and the taxes and the insurance and the repairs. It doesn't happen. The tenants break the windows, and they break the plumbing, then they call code enforcement that I'm a slum landlady, which is false. And well, I've been paying for since 2011 because I come and I rebuttal, and they say, well, you have to pay, you have to pay. So I'm going to address that next time because I just want to elaborate more on it because I have charts, and I was asking how much do I owe, how much have I paid so far? Give me a balance, and I didn't get anything. So I'll wait till I get that and come back. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. And the third thing you wanted to talk about, no, I'm just kidding. Sit down, please. Next is Rick Morris, Politics and Magic Tricks. Rick Morris, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're done. Is it time to adjourn? What's next? Public utilities.
Budget overflow.
DPW budget, and then a closed session, but we don't have a quorum, so we might want to take a break until we do.
Good man. Public Works is next, you said? Okay. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 3:45. Thank you.
Okay. Jane, do you remember where we were?
Yes, I certainly do. I believe that we were going to finish up general city purpose. I didn't know whether anybody else had any questions. I know Councilmember Soria had some questions that I believe have been addressed, but wanted to make sure that the discussion was finished for general city purpose.
Thank you for bringing us up to speed. And I have a question for Member Soria.
Okay.
I do want to say thank you for meeting with myself and Paul earlier today and responding to a number of questions related to the general city purpose budget. And just for the record, I just want to put some of the information that you provided, which I think was very valuable. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions, and then we can move on to Public Works. But we had asked questions regarding, on page 69, the professional services and consulting, on what the $1,122,000 or what the $1,122,000 would be allocated for.
Right, and that is basically the federal and state lobbyists' costs are contained within that line item, as are the contracts for Muni Services, which is the city's sales tax consultant. Also contained within that line item are the management fees for the deferred compensation program, which is funded by, or which is monitored by the retirement office, and also the SB 90 contract for the consultant that ensures that we obtain all of our state mandated reimbursements.
Perfect. And then on the next page, page 70, there is a special projects line item for $1 million. Can you just give us the breakdown? I know that you provided that information to us, but just for the record.
Sure, that's fine. The $1 million consists of funding for the Youth Leadership Institute, the Summer Jobs Program. There's also the $500,000 for the CDBG repayment, and then there is $375,000 for election costs to cover the elections that were held this year, or will be held this year.
Perfect. And then I didn't ask this question in our meeting, but I don't know if you, Jane, or Bruce could answer this. So there's that repayment. When do we know the timeline of that repayment? Because I know once we know from the federal government if we have to repay or don't, then we could have access to those dollars.
So we're talking about the CDBG payback? So we just got agreement with HUD on how they're going to go forward with, for lack of a better term, an audit, and how they're going to review where those dollars were spent. I'm going to hope that we're going to have this resolved within the next, I'm looking at really 3 to 4 months. Do we believe we'll have an answer one way or another from HUD? Yeah, they're doing. So probably by November, we'll know whether or not we have to pay, and if we do, how much that's going to be.
Okay. And so once that, if we don't have to pay, are you guys going to come back with how we're going to spend those monies?
That would be a mid-year adjustment. If it's around November, we can come back with how we would recommend spending those, because it'll be a one-time source of funds.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Quintero.
The other questions, I just had a couple more. The other questions, which were information that you were going to get to us, was on the Enterprise Zone Fund. I know that in that fund you mentioned that EDC was funded $50K, and I know a motion was made to increase that funding, but there is obviously a balance there.
Right, and actually, to clarify, I went back after our meeting and took a look at the actual expenditures that have been expended out of that fund year to date, and that $1 million is actually slightly overstated. Now we are anticipating a carryover and a miscellaneous expenditures amount of about $900,000. So some of that money has been spent, so it's no longer going to be $1,038,000. It would be probably more in the realm of $900,000 to be carried over to 17.
And council member, I asked Renee, because I was busy with some other things, to follow up, and she has some detail as to what and how these dollars are used.
So you guys will bring that information to us?
We're prepared to provide that to the council right now.
Oh, you guys have it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, no. The industrial compatibility study, which we're carrying over, is a piece of that, as well as the manufacturing cluster that council approved a little while back. We have a Central Avenue engineering study that's we're going to be performing in 2017, and which includes some official plan line movements, and then the EDC payment.
So
all
how
comes out
much
of that.
is that study going to cost us?
All of that together leaves us with about $200,000 that is really unplanned in that line item. Other than the fact that we like to use that money when we get economic development opportunities such as Tesla or Nordstrom's when they come to town, these are the funds then that we go to in order to be able to perform the studies or to be able to provide incentives when
So that there may be flexibility there to increase the budget as was requested by a motion because of the 200,000 that is unplanned, correct?
That 200, when I say unplanned, I would say that we plan to use it. Hopefully we'll have some economic development opportunities, but that is what it's for. There's nothing specific identified right now for that.
Okay, perfect. And then the other question, because I thought if you go down to the economic development infrastructure, there's about $2 million in that, and I believe that Bruce had mentioned that was for the reverse triangle. So how is that different from, I guess, the other funding that you talked about?
And actually, that $2 million is the same $2 million, and we have received preliminary notification that we've actually been successful in the grant, that we're going to use this to match. And so if we can get the paperwork by June 30th, we'll be able to encumber those funds, so then this $2 million goes away. If we don't get the paperwork, the reason it's budgeted here is to be able to have those match funds available for the grant.
And Mr. Westerland's here. He can speak to the EDA grant and what it'll be used and how this is a match. So, Mr. Westerland?
Good afternoon, Council Member and Council President. So Larry Westerland, Director of Economic Development. And so I think there was a question as related to the EDA grant, and this is in the South Van Ness, South Van Ness industrial area. We are currently being heard by the review committee in Seattle. They're in session yesterday and today, and I think tomorrow. And our application is being heard. We've gotten some initial feedback. They like it. They think it will work well. You may remember this was initially a redevelopment agency project that was going to do some infrastructure for the South Van Ness industrial area. This is where Lyons Magnus is, OK Produce, Gussamer, it's the old Pana-Pacific area in there. There's really about $20 million worth of work that needs to be done. This first grant would be in the tune of about $4.5 million. We would have about under $2 million as our part of it, and then we're hoping to get close to $4 million from the Economic Development Administration, and they're going through that right now.
And so the timing is probably by the end of the month we'll know, as mentioned.
We should, at least for the initial review on that. Hopefully we'll hear from them next week, but there's no guarantee on that.
So since there's no guarantee in terms of even receiving the grant, so what happens if we don't receive the grant?
Well, if we don't receive the grant, then we would put in for another round of grant funding. So they have multiple funding opportunities for that. But there are certainly lots of needs for the industrial side of stuff, and particularly that South Van Ness industrial area. But it would then become open and available for that opportunity or something else. Yes.
And so these are general fund monies? Okay, so if we don't get approved, the council, or we can decide if we can move it to another project, or so there's flexibility there. It's not an enterprise or anything like that. Okay.
It's not an enterprise. It is a grant match. So you spend 2 to get another 2, you get 4. And as Mr. Westerland pointed out, if you've been into the older industrial part of our community, it is in a lot of need, and as he indicated, it was supposed to be an RDA project, but with the collapse of the RDA, the best way for us to start dealing with very, very, very old infrastructure is through the CDA grant.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think those were all the questions that I had for the general city purpose. So again, thank you for making the time and answering all the other questions that we went over.
Member Quintero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to make two motions under general city purpose. Assistant City Manager Renee Smith said I could do them at this time, so that's why I'm doing that. The first one, City Clerk, is to move a line item of $48,000 in the general fund for the Fresno Historical Society, and the funds would support the society's work here at City Hall, including the preparation of exhibit cases in the city foyers, presentations for the Mayor's Citizens Academy, research for city projects, historic information to potential relocated businesses, as well as the society's overall educational programming for local students. The funding would support the collection and preservation of the historic artifacts, photographs, and documents that record the history of Fresno. And the reason for making this motion under the general city purpose is that in years back, the city gave the Historical Society a pass-through grant of $48,000 through the planning department. And this grant that was deleted from the budget during the recession, so it's basically a restoration of grants. And then the second one is I'm going to have to do that later because I misplaced that paper. It's for the Big Fresno Fair one, Renee, that you and I spoke about. Yeah, I'll do that on Monday, I guess. Oh, excuse me. Is that the one? Well, you already knew, didn't you? Okay, great.
She pulled a Jerry Dyer.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, this is the one for the Fresno County Historical Museum, the new one that's at the fairgrounds that opened in October of 2015, and the cost of the facility is $3.3 million, which about half has already been raised. And the new facility is a gift to the people of Fresno, which would enhance the tourism and generate direct and indirect economic impact dollars into our economy. And the motion would be that the city of Fresno provide $25,000 support to the Big Fresno Fair Historical Museum, and the funds to come from the pari-mutuel racing revenue generated that go directly towards paying down the balance of the facility. And Assistant City Manager, can you talk a little bit about that, those monies and the impact?
The pari-mutuel tax is a tax that's levied against the horse racing, both at the Fresno Fairgrounds and at Club One. And on an annual basis, the city receives approximately $40,000 of revenue from the pari-mutuel. So this $25,000 would be offset against those revenues.
So that has no impact on our general fund of $25,000
It's $25,000 in the general fund, yes.
Yeah. Okay, which we didn't know we were getting that, did we? For a long time. Anyway, that's a motion that I'd like to do for that one. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. And did you get the motion in the second? Motion by, all right, motion by Member Quintero, seconded by Member Brand. Next up is Councilmember Brand.
I'd like to make a motion. This is not related to city general purpose, but the motion is to set aside $250,000 for citywide program for homeowner rebates on homeowners impacted by corroded galvanized pipe for rebate for replacing fixtures and the supply line. And this would be through the Water Enterprise Division.
I'll second that. Anything else, Member Brand?
Councilmember Brand, could we maybe try to narrow the focus? Because if the issue is, as we believe, is the use of pipe that was produced offshore in Korea or someplace else, and we believe that most of that occurred between 1990 and 2000, then I would suggest and recommend that you limit that to that era, because we have galvanized pipe that could be 40 years old at ages as just like galvanized pipe does.
Well, I was going to, when I do the amendment on the Water Conservation Act, I was going to detail that out. I'm okay with that, but at this point in time, we're still uncertain on exactly.
Well, there's galvanized pipe all over town that is 40, 50 years old, the way it's currently.
Let's put between 1989 and 1999.
Okay, thank you.
How's that sound? So just to refine it, but it will be worked out. Okay. So it'll be between 1989 and 1999.
I'll continue to second. Thank you. Member Baines.
Thanks, Council President. Hey, just a really quick thing. I don't know if we ever got the SPCA issue resolved from removing that reporting under Parks. But if we didn't, I would suggest that we put it under general city purposes. So if we have not done that, I'm going to make a motion that we take, in the future budget years, put the SPCA budget under general city purposes.
Motion by Member Baines, seconded by Member Soria. Anything else, sir? Very good. Okay, we'll end that portion of funding. And last but certainly not least, and the most patient department in the city, Scott, it's your opportunity. Oh, sorry, Jane, you can introduce, and Scott will take over.
I will be brief. The Public Works Department starts on page B125. This is a multiple funded department. Its total budget is both capital and operating is $149,198,600. It has a total of 305.25 FTE, or 310 total positions. Major changes for FY 2017, they propose adding a new concrete crew to address tree damaged sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. They are also proposing increases in overlay and paving operations, pothole repair, and street tree trimming. The schedule for those activities, in addition to the other activities in Street Maintenance Division, is on page B129, so I would draw your attention to that schedule. Also, they are planning on the replacement of equipment and vehicles for park and street maintenance, and also traffic signals and street lights. This equipment is past its sell-by date and is in dire need of replacement. They also propose adding one electrician in traffic signals and street lights to help address the repair backlog that they have. And also they are planning on purchasing 3 replacement street sweepers from community sanitation funds. As far as the revenues are concerned, the general fund revenues projected at $3.3 million in FY17, which is a slight increase as compared to the FY16 amended budget. One of the other major revenues in this department is state gas tax, which is based on the amount of gallons sold as to the cost. So as the cost of gas increases, the associated revenue decreases as people buy less fuel. The actual combined state revenue for special gas tax, Prop 111, and ABX 86 gas tax in FY17 is projected at $11.7 million, which is $900,000 higher than FY16 revenue estimates. The state estimates for special gas tax and Prop 111 are going up. However, the estimate for ABX 86 is going down due to the BOE's lowering of the tax collected per gallon of gas by 18%. The Board of Equalization, not BOE. Measure C Extension Fund. Another one of those revenue sources is Measure C. Obviously, they have multiple sub-programs within that. The actual Measure C for all sub-programs is budgeted at $11.1 million in FY17, which is a slight increase over FY16. The Internal Service Fund that they have is facilities. Their operating revenue is budgeted at $8 million, which includes facilities charges of $5.4 million, When compared to the FY18 amended budget, total revenue is increasing by approximately $70,000, which is primarily attributable to increases in facilities charges and property losses. The other notes to make on the expenditures is that the total operations, including facilities, budgeted for FY17 is $61.5 million. About $87.6 is budgeted for capital, and $140,000 is allocated for debt service, which is the iBank loan for the Roding Business Park. General fund appropriations are budgeted at $8.3 million in 17, which is $909,000 decrease as compared to the FY16 budget. A portion of this decrease is due to the completion of some of the neighborhood street improvement program. All unexpended funds from that program have been carried over and will be used in FY17. Community sanitation operating appropriations are budgeted at $10.1 million in FY17, an increase of $2.1 million as compared to the FY16 budget, primarily due to the purchase of those 3 street sweepers. Just to restate the staffing, by division, the engineering division is planning on adding an engineering tech to implement and maintain the data management system that they are implementing in that department. Street maintenance will be adding a street maintenance supervisor to oversee the capital concrete program, and 2 maintenance and construction workers as a part of the new concrete crew. Landscape maintenance supervisors, tree program specialist, and 3 new and 7 converted laborers for street trees, median islands, and the landscape maintenance districts and the CFDs. They will also be adding 1 park maintenance worker and 1 irrigation specialist. And again, for the traffic signals and streetlights, they will be adding 1 electrician to address the repair backlog. That concludes my presentation, and Scott is here to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Scott, would you like to do an introduction or give us some highlights of the fantastic work you and your department do for the city of Fresno?
Thank you, Council President, Council members, colleagues. I'm Scott Mosier with Public Works Department, and would like just to touch on some highlights. Again, Public Works is a diverse department. Even though we have a lot of focus and there's a lot of attention on streets, we have 5 different operating divisions, ranging from landscape maintenance is actually our largest. Streets, we have traffic and engineering services, facilities, and then also capital management. Some big, for me, some accomplishments that I'm really proud of, some highlights. Having Fulton Mall reconstruction fully funded, value engineered, and underway with a great team in place. Neighborhood street work, we're continuing that. Good quality, we're averaging a little bit under, about 10% under budget on the projects we're doing. Projects that have been completed successfully, things like Martin Ray Riley, Inspiration Park, getting Cultural Arts District Park underway. We have the ATP, Trails Master Plan, and Midtown Trail Design getting started. So that's a focus this next year. Meanwhile, we continue in traffic with the Intelligent Transportation System projects. You'll see a number in the budget to deliver another 8 corridors this year, get us about 2/3 of our signals into the system. You'll see a continued focus on business-friendly Fresno. For development services and public works. And on the, just again to add to what Jane shared in landscape maintenance, we're using dollars collected in the community facilities districts, neighborhoods where there's funding available to augment those services. And the proposal is to add a second CFD-focused landscape enhancement crew. We created a first crew this last year, and we've been going around all around the city where the districts have dollars, and going and redoing landscapings, replanting shrubs, replacing trees that had died, redoing irrigation systems. So that's been successful, and we're proposing a second in the budget. And also, again, in the budget, you'll see our indirect cost reimbursement program in that budget, something that was initiated last year citywide. And we're now building upon that success and reducing negative fund balances and increasing the yield on each project that we can bring back for the city. And staff's available with any questions. I'll go ahead and stop there at this point.
Thank you very much. Member Brandau, it's your opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyone in the public wish to come forward and talk about this item, please do so. Seeing none, back to the dais. Member Brandau.
A couple of questions, Scott. So as I examine just in general, the Public Works budget, which is among my favorites, let me add, because I love to see the things you guys do in my district. So, but as I look at it in general, it seems like there's really increases in almost every one of your subdivisions. Is that right? I mean, overlay, crack seal, pothole repair, emergency street services, tree trimming, landscape, median island. Am I getting that right? That looks fantastic.
That is correct. Increases in each one, and it's unfortunate from a service delivery standpoint that we had that reduction, as Jane had mentioned, in the what we tend to call new gas tax, ABX 86, which had an 18% drop. That impacted us $800,000 this year. But not for that, we could deliver additional services. But you're correct. You see increases in each of those. The overlay in pothole program, again within median maintenance, landscape maintenance, and a lot of that is also related to the long overdue vehicle replacements.
Right.
For example, in the park maintenance program, you see an increase there. It's not a staffing increase, but it's a replacement of 2 turf tractors to improve our service delivery.
Well, I saw I see that you have street light repair vehicles, a boom truck, for instance. Hypothetically, I could drive that truck, and Councilman Caprioli will drive the older trucks. but
I don't think I trust you with the new truck.
so it looks really like overall we're seeing the whole department in almost every subdivision of the department moving forward. And I also see a lot of computers added as well. Is that right?
That is correct. And computer replacements were something that we stayed away from as a result of the Great Recession and then the years thereafter. So at the moment, we have situations where there's a lot of basically a lost opportunity for staff productivity because the older computers are having so many problems. They take longer to start up, or let's say for our design section, for example, it takes a long time to pull up an AutoCAD drawing on a project being worked on. So that's a lost opportunity for us actually to produce more.
Right.
And if I might add, too, Public Works is going to be one of the partners in the land management system. And so by us beefing up our GIS and our land management system and being able to provide better customer service to our development community, they're going to need more powerful laptops.
Okay, Renee, is that the Better Business Friendly Task Force technology piece?
Yes.
Are these computers part of that overhaul, or is that the system? These are the hardware computer overhaul, and that's the programming, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Jane, do you know how much do we pay for a computer in the system? I mean, we're getting a lot of computers. Do we buy them in bulk and get a great price? I'd love to give up my District 2 computer, by the way.
Well, I believe that ISD does buy under a contract, but again, you also have to understand that the ones for Public Works are somewhat specialized in that they have to be, they have to have more memory, and they have to, because they handle very large programs. The AutoCAD program is huge. And so they have to be kind of a little specialized, but I do believe ISD does buy in bulk, and so we do get a discount, and I think the total cost for the monitor and everything else is, what, $1,100? Something like that. But I mean, that also includes paying into a replacement fund so that they can replace that computer at a date later when that computer becomes obsolete in 6 months, and they have to replace it.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just noticed a lot of computers. I'm not against it. I was just wondering, with the purchase of so many computers, it seems like a lot of computers, a lot of vehicles, and increase of service. So I think all that's fantastic, by the way. Jane mentioned the concrete strike team, so tell me a little bit about the specifics of that, because that seems like that's one of your biggest. That's $806,000 for that team. What is that team going to help us with?
So the concrete program it'll still have one crew full-time on concrete repair, a second crew that's half-time on concrete repair, the other half on what we call capital projects, which may involve things like council infrastructure, funded type projects, or things where we can utilize them for that work. What's being added in the $800,000 would be two new employees. Those are maintenance and construction workers, and they would be basically the concrete patch team, wherein now with the Fresco app, our awareness of these issues is actually growing. The number that are reported as damaged and needing repair, that amount's growing. We currently have what my Streets Division Manager, Brian Russell, and I have estimated about a 20-year backlog on the repair of concrete sidewalks.
Patches, are these patches or you're talking about patches?
And so so we have, in terms of trip and fall and liability, the city has an immediate need to then address those upon reporting. So the new employees will actually be patching the sidewalks temporarily while we get our permanent repair crews on board to follow behind. And again, we do have currently what we'd estimate to about a 20-year backlog of deferred maintenance on sidewalks, assuming that the trees cause no further damage.
Right. Okay. But you also did. Now tell me a little bit about median landscape. That's a pretty decent increase, $772,000. What can we look forward to seeing in these improvements in our city?
So the median landscape item includes a couple of components as far as the increase. One is just simply the vehicle equipment replacement. For example, one is what's known as the Dingo. That's really like a Bobcat, but a more light duty for landscape purpose. And that enables us to do things like spread the chips that reduce weeds and actually help reduce maintenance costs later. But also we've relied heavily on temporary employees in years past. And if you go back many, many years, the city had temporary employees who were basically on board for several years in a temporary capacity. And with the Affordable Care Act and other changes in laws, that's not a viable practice. So what we've had is temporary employees coming on for a very short time and then having to be let go. So we have four of those, what we call temporary to permanent conversions in this budget. That'll augment the median crews. It'll enable us to guarantee that we have two crews out there. At the moment, if we have employees out or we're not able to bring on more temporary help in time, sometimes we consolidate down to one crew, and that causes a loss in service. And also in the median program, again, we do have what I'd call some one-time type assistance of an outside vendor contract help to go ahead and hit probably about 7 or 8 medians for a few cycles a year to attempt to get the weeds removed, alleviated as much as possible. And
then landscape maintenance, how does that differ then from median island? You also have a pretty decent increase there.
That's on
page 130, the bottom left paragraph. Landscape maintenance program. CFDs and LLMDs.
All right, so the landscape maintenance program, as referred to in the budget, those are our especially funded districts, the community facilities districts, and the landscape lighting maintenance district, so CFD, LLMD. In those two areas, we continue to have dollars coming in those neighborhoods, and I think we've got a great program for the regular weekly and monthly cleaning and maintenance. We have a lot of that outsourced to 2 private vendors. However, what they do not do and what this budget is addressing is adding a second CFD enhancement crew. And what that is more so almost like a landscape construction crew, wherein it's not the regular vendor, a lead or all commercial who's coming through each month just to clean, get rid of the weeds, check irrigation, make sure it's working. It's the crew who comes and says, we've lost, over the years, we've lost 20% of the shrubs, for example, or we've lost some trees. Landscapes don't last forever. And the supervisor there plans out projects. We actually have a tract-by-tract balance we keep for each subdivision. So a tract may have $50,000 available in the bank, and we recognize it's overdue. It's overdue for some enhancements. So we've gone in, and we've done this in a number of the council districts this past year with the crew that we have. And again, come in and really refresh that landscape, add shrubs, add trees, and replace irrigation systems.
So, and it looks like overall, if I flip over to page 130, B130, you're adding close to 15 new personnel then, department-wide.
That is correct. Now, 7 of those are conversions of temporary employees into permanent employees. 4 of them, I'd mentioned earlier, were on the Median Island crews. And so we're making, again, 4 more permanent city employees as proposed. 3 of them are on the tree crews. Each tree crew is a 2-person crew. And for the past few years, we've had 1 permanent employee, a tree trimming lead worker, and then the second has been a temporary employee who comes along behind.
Just for a total of 2
and so when we've had three crews, so 3 of them have been temporary employees. That's caused us a lot of downtime. We're not always able to bring temporary employees in or to keep them when you need to let them go. And so often Mr. Aguirre and the landscape division are running with one or 2 tree crews. Meanwhile, the Fresgo customer service application is showing us that street tree calls are one of the highest that we have, street trees and street light repairs. So the proposal is, again, using community sanitation funds to basically just convert those 3, make them full-time permanent employees. We expect to get much better quality of the work and much greater reliability and respond to the public.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The other day, we opened up the new trail, the Midtown Trail. You were there, and Councilman Capriolio. It was funny when I was walking out to my car, the mayor was taking picture of a boarded-up house, and she was using Fresgo. So that's fantastic. But the reality of Fresgo is that it has shown us how much work is out there. Right? It's even shown us more how much is out there. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because your department gets those frontline calls. A lot of those Fresgo apps point to services that you do. I mean, I know there's code enforcement side of it, but there's a public works side of it as well. So, Scott, I need Bruce to cover his ears, but if there was anything in your department that you felt still needed a little help, could you point to anything?
Again, we've talked in years past about deferred maintenance and the issues out there.
Scott, speak freely. They allow the chief.
Absolutely.
They allowed the chief to do that, and he rolled off about $3 million worth of requests.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, the big picture one is, of course, the condition of the pavement.
Right.
And that, I'm very, very pleased, very proud of the budget that we have this year. It puts about $14 million total into paving between streets operations and the contracts that we have through grants. But the need is really about $22 million a year for that. So we're still about $8 million short. However, I would submit to you that that's not exclusively a general fund or city problem, but it's something my colleagues in other cities, counties, state DOTs are all dealing with. So in some sense, we have the gas tax model that we have is not delivering the revenue to take care of what we have. And that's a big conversation in Congress and the legislature.
We have a lot of people driving these electric vehicles here now that are getting away with murder. Okay, exactly.
So that's a big need. A couple other areas are, again, just reflecting back to about 10 years ago, to keep up on concrete, tree damage concrete, that really is about close to about a $5 million a year effort. I'm confident we're running the most efficient operation we can, most cost effective, but we're spending about $1.7 million a year on concrete. So we're about a third of what would it take to truly keep up. That said, I fully recognize the priority of public safety, park maintenance, and other things. Last two that I'd mention, just again, where, in spite of this being, I think, a good budget, where do we come up a little short? One is on the tree trimming. That's a really significant need. We get a lot of calls for tree trimming. Either the density of the canopy is too much and people can't see the street lights, the streets are dark, or else just the trees are in poor condition and limbs threatening to fall. We deal with the hot spots, but again, the city of Fresno used to have a $1 to $2 million a year tree trimming program, and we are short of that. Last one again is just on streets would be a slurry type program. Appreciated working with District 2 on that this year, and we're in the neighborhood program this summer. We're doing some slurry seals of streets that have not fallen apart yet but are still decent and we can save with that type of investment.
Yeah, slurry can jump in and really extend the life of streets that we all know are deteriorating. So kind of a, what were we going to say? Yeah, tell me about our slurry program, what our deferred maintenance is on, how much could we use in a, I mean, that's almost in a huge numbers, but tell us about where's the city at in the slurry program?
Well, one piece of good news is on brand new neighborhoods that are annexed into the CFDs. Those actually include a slurry seal and future overlay component. So very much just like they were a private HOA and
Right.
built that into the HOA dues and rates, same thing for streets the city is taking on. So we're getting them squared away on a go-forward basis. However, we have really everything up to about 2010. We have about 3,800 lane miles of streets in the city, and all of those are on, the pavement's only expected to last a little over 20 years. And a slurry would be ideal at about year 10. So best practice would be we could easily be doing $1 million a year of slurry seal on neighborhood streets. And it'd be a balanced program of a slurry treatment and then also dollars going toward full reconstruction.
Sure.
For our
And
older-
so $1 million a year would be easy. Where are we at a year now on slurry?
At the moment, there is no set allocated program. That's something that we defunded, I believe, in 2009. Part of that because that was a contract. That's a contracted service. There's a little bit of an art in doing a slurry, and it's not something either that we're equipped to do with our own forces or that we would recommend even trying to ramp up to do. A lot of good private contractors who do that work. So that was something that was very easy back in the severe cuts and recession to get rid of. So with the neighborhood program, what we've been doing is working with each of the council offices, and if we find streets that are appropriate for a slurry treatment where they don't need total reconstruction, repave, we've recommended those and had some of yourself and some colleagues who've said that looks like a great investment, let's do it. Council awarded a requirements contract, I believe about 6 weeks ago, on the agenda, and that's enabling this work to go forward again.
Fantastic. So in last year's budget, when we increased the council district neighborhood program, what percentage of that work's been done across citywide for our different council districts? About half.
About
and
half.
the other half is scheduled. I know enough about District 2, but so pretty much we'll wrap that stuff up this summer if we wanted to continue with an idea like that.
Correct. We even have work. We have work going on this very week in those areas. Also on the slurry seal projects that were selected, we've had the pre-construction meeting with the contractor and so we'll be getting their schedule very soon. But I'm expecting this summer all of that work from this prior fiscal year. It's all encumbered, but that work will all be done.
Fantastic. Well, I love seeing the work that you guys do in my district, and I know that the no, that was an amendment to last year's budget, so we'd have to do that again. Yeah. So Scott, yeah, the neighborhood street program was connected to last year's budget, right?
That is correct. Both 16, this prior year, and then the year before.
Yeah, and then the year
fiscal
before.
year 15.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Thank you. Did you council members, you enjoy that, right? Yeah, because you get some say into the neighborhoods that need some overhaul. I really like that. What's that? You guys are getting me in trouble. All right. Hey, Scott, thank you very much. I was just wrapping up by saying, I know that my residents, and I'm sure residents throughout the city, really appreciate seeing your crews out there, whether it's fixing a pothole, trimming a tree, fixing a sidewalk that's been deteriorating. It's fantastic. So thanks for all the good work.
Appreciate the support and always glad to be there.
Thank you very much. Member Brandel, although I have an electric Fiat for my daughter, I have 6 other cars, so I pay a lot in gas tax and 3 motorcycle-type vehicles. So just so you know, you need to catch up, bud. Member Baines.
Thanks, Council President. And actually, Councilmember Brandau asked some of the very same questions I have. So, but it gave rise to a couple of other questions. So thanks, Councilmember Brandau, for that. I want to jump to the median island landscaping work really quick. Do we have downtown and Chinatown programmed for that? With the median, that work we're going to do?
We do for median landscaping. This is the median landscape maintenance.
Right.
And downtown, we actually do to how it's planted and a lot more activity in the area. We actually have that on a little bit higher cycle than some other areas of the city. So that will continue. We'll continue to provide that same level that we've had this past year and the year to come as far as downtown.
And what about Chinatown?
And Chinatown, as far as median islands, we'll be continuing the same thing. Also, the outside vendor, that's helping us because with two crews, we have situations where there's a rotation to the work. And so if it takes us, say, 60 days to get to a certain area, in the meantime, the growth, the weeds can really come up. What we're using the outside vendor for is strategically to help us out. So we're not waiting for our east-west city crew and our north-south crew to always just make their rounds, but we're hitting those hot spots. And for example, Chinatown, things like the G Street, Median Island area, we can tackle those much more quickly.
Okay. So you have this situated on kind of a schedule, rotational schedule?
We do.
Could you send that to me, what you have for downtown and Chinatown specifically?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I know you don't know it off the top of your head, but if you get a chance, send it over to me. And then I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned that we have a 20-year backlog in our concrete work, and so I know that we're putting a little over $800,000 into our concrete strike team this year, and Councilman Brandau brought it up, but I'm curious as to, with the investment of the additional $800,000 this year, how much will we be able to penetrate into that 20-year backlog?
With the additional $800,000, again, I would estimate the 20-year backlog is in the range of 25 million worth of repairs.
So not really at all. We're not going to put much of a dent in it.
It will make a dent, and I think one thing that'll be really positive with the strike team and the patch crew is we expect we'll be able to respond to any Fresco service request within 1 week. So we'll at least be able to get out there, make that assessment. We'll make it safe. Again, most of the time people want to see the permanent sidewalk repair, but at least we can mitigate that trip hazard within 1 week's time of reporting. and also that'll help us build a much better database, identify the needs, strategically put neighborhoods together, and where we can go after grant dollars as well. So I think there's opportunity for this investment. $800,000, of course, including 2 backhoe replacements. There's opportunity for that to even yield more outside resources coming in.
So, just to make sure I get the heart of my question answered, with the additional $800,000 and the 20-year backlog, we don't think we're going to be able to dig deep into that backlog.
We do not expect to dig deep into the major amount of deferred maintenance on sidewalks.
Yeah.
That's correct. It's a step in the right direction, but again, we've looked, we've scoured every possible dollar and what we can do, but basically we look and see, a no neighborhood left behind situation. Councilmember Quintero remembers, he's asked before about, for example, the 7-week program. And when we used to run that operation, that basically that concrete program was a $5 million a year concrete program for repairs. So we're trying to maximize what we can do, maximize those resources, but ultimately, in the grand scheme of priorities, and I think it's a good.
No, certainly. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think for the interest of the discussion, we just need to know what the reality is. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I kind of want to chat a little bit now about the tree trimming. You mentioned that the tree trimming budget used to be significantly higher than it is now. What should our tree trimming budget be to really keep pace with our needs?
I would estimate we're about $1 million short on tree trimming to keep up with the needs. Today, again, it's a good budget in that area. Currently, our tree trimming budget's made up of 2 sources. One is community sanitation funds. That's about half of the dollars in the budget. The other half are solid waste enterprise fees. So those dollars are really limited to where the solid waste division says we can't get in this neighborhood and service our customers because the tree limbs are too low. The garbage trucks can't get in to actually pick it up. So the solid waste dollars are not something we can just go into any neighborhood and do trims to open up the canopy for street lights or more so for the health of the trees. So our true discretionary flexible dollars to deal with all the neighborhoods on tree trimming is really only about $600,000. And again, formerly we were dealing in the $1.5 million to $2 million range of a tree trimming program. Again, the solid waste dollars are very helpful, but we are limited to where Mr. Schuber and his team at Solid Waste says we need a solid waste, we need a clearance trim through this neighborhood.
Right. And so are we on what cycle are we on now? 20, 22 years? What is it?
Right about that range, in the 20 to 25 year range. Again, due to the downturn in the economy, City of Fresno's investment, it's just been up and down each year. Some years very, very low. Some years you could have computed it on a 50-year cycle. But we think right now we're pretty close to a 20-year trim cycle.
And what kind of backlog do we have on that for the tree trimming, would you estimate?
Let me ask Aaron or Gary to give me some feedback.
Right now, a lot of it's emergencies, but we're typically, in some cases, with regular trim, it's probably a month or so.
Typical backlog is about a month.
That's not too bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But again, the real issue with the backlog is that we have just whole swaths of the city where we have not done a proactive, preventive type of trim in there. It's essentially it's almost all reactive. We have a situation where constituent reports great concern about the tree. Is it stable? Is there an issue? We have a compounding effect of we've had the drought that's really stressed a lot of the trees. We've had installation of water meters coupled with the recession where people try to save money now that they're charged for each gallon they use. Some residents have stopped watering their park strips to add to that. So in essence, it's really been, I'll use the term kind of perfect storm with respect to the trees. And now, we're trying to restore services and build that back up.
Sure, and I have a particular case that we're dealing with out of my office right now, where a resident has a very large tree, very tall, and she's really elderly neighborhood, elderly resident, and she's really concerned about whether or not the tree's going to potentially, a limb's going to fall off, or whether the tree's going to blow over. And I would just say this, and I was talking to, we've talked to your staff about it, I've talked to my staff about it, and we just have to make sure that if we're not going to do something that that we really explain it to our community well. I think tree trimming and topping, and when the canopies get really high and what have you, I think it's confusing. People are living in fear that a big strong wind is going to blow over a tree, and I know we may have some confidence that that's not going to happen, but we don't necessarily communicate that to our residents. And so we've got to figure out a way to make sure that when we are behind on a tree, or if we're not going to give them the topping that they need or what have you, that we figure out a way to say this is why. You have a healthy tree. Healthy trees typically don't fall over. The trees that do fall over are the more distressed ones. They're unhealthy, blah, 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 what have you. So just a word of advice, and we'll be making sure, just from our office, that when we work with your staff, we're going to do that. But we got to be real clear on how we communicate, this tree issue, because it's a big one. We probably get, and I'm not the only district, but, I have a lot of very mature neighborhoods in my district where, the trees have grown for a very long time, and they're very tall. They are healthy, but, it still causes quite a bit of distress to some residents. So I would just recommend that we find a way to communicate that better. And I think those are all my questions, Council President, because Councilmember Brandow really touched on the areas of most importance to me, but I had a couple follow-ups, so thank you.
Thank you, Member Baines. Member Soria.
Thank you. I only have a couple questions. I know that a number of them have already been raised. Thank you, Scott, for the highlights, and also for being candid about the needs that still exist beyond the budget allocations or the budget appropriations that we're doing for this next fiscal year. I know that my staff, unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet earlier today with you. I still want to do a follow-up meeting before I end up voting on the budget, because I still have particular questions regarding District 1. I know we all have a great amount of need in our community. I'm excited about the concrete strike team. I had my staff print out for my district, the need. I think I have over 300 right here just from the Fresco app. So I can imagine that all the districts are probably experiencing very similar. So glad to see that funded in the budget. I also, just wanted to highlight some of the other things that I know that in my district is important. As you guys mentioned, the tree trimming, which I hope that maybe we can find some additional funds. I know that especially in some of the older neighborhoods, like I mentioned previously, they're covering some of the street lights, which become a safety issue because it's dark at night. I've also mentioned previously during CDBG discussions, some of the infrastructure needs, like in the Highway City area. I do want to say thank you for providing me the preliminary engineer estimate for that sidewalk on the west side of Polk. I've kind of reiterated the issue, but in terms of having people with, or just anyone access to a safe walking path to the park and to the school, I think is really important for me. So I do want to sit down with the city manager and you guys to figure out if there's a way to start allocating some funds for that. I know that you've given me an estimate about $1.9 million in terms of the infrastructure needs for that area, correct?
And it's about 1.9, I believe that was in construction, and then there's some right-of-way along that side, plus the storm drain, the flood control pipe to go in. The total is close to 2.9 million for that half mile.
And I know that in other districts, like I believe District 3, you guys are doing a project where you guys did part of like the Roy and Almy area part last year and then this year. So I think that I at least want to start thinking about a plan to move forward with Highway City. I know that we inherited, and it's an issue that we inherited, but just because we inherited doesn't mean that we put it aside and not figure out how we're going to tackle it. For me, that's a priority, at least while I'm serving, representing District 1. So we'll want to sit down with you guys and figure out how we can start looking, if there's some flexibility this year to start allocating some funds and then looking forward in the next year or so, and the next future years for that particular neighborhood. The other thing, I had a couple other questions. So I know that you notified me earlier last month, I believe, about the grant that we received for the streetscape on Olive that District 1 and District 3 share. So just wanted to ask, will there be a need for any additional allocation of monies, or that will cover the needs in terms of that streetscape plan?
The Olive Avenue project, that was the grant to Fresno COG for Olive Avenue, bull bouts, pedestrian improvements, the streetscape in that area. And Council, that's one where we received final notification of that in May, so as such too late to get in the actual printed budget document. But what we would anticipate is, since that's a new grant, we would come back to the council early fall, late summer, early fall, with a requested amendment to the AAR to basically add those into the capital budget for this year. And we have actually some other good news on that as well. So typically it happens about 4 or 5 months after COG goes through their grant scoring process, and pretty much every other year we'll have a fairly significant item to bring before the council, really good news item of requesting those to be added into the Public Works budget.
So this will be what we will be bringing back, since it's not allocated.
That'd be correct.
And do we need any additional funds, or will those grant monies be sufficient to cover that project?
The grant dollars would cover 88, it's a funny number, but it's 88.5% of the project. Off the top of my head, I believe the match on that may be in the $150,000 to $200,000 range. But in our 5-year capital, the department, working together with the budget office, we actually anticipate what the typical City of Fresno receipt of grants is each year, and then be sure to set aside those dollars over the 5-year plan, such that whatever project may be, whether it's project in District 1 or another council district, that we have the ability to match that we're not then turning away outside dollars. So we have planned for that as well.
Okay, so it is planned in this budget.
That's correct. Well, we only need a smaller amount for the preliminary engineering, go through the CEQA, federal NEPA environmental process, bring a design consultant on board, get that started, and the construction match, which is that would be in excess of $100,000. That would be programmed in a later fiscal year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And that's really good news for the Tower area. So it's exciting. I know that my predecessor, along with the community, had been working on a plan for a number of years. And so one piece of it was done on Wishon and Olive. So I know that the residents of that area will be very happy to learn that we were awarded this grant. So thank you for the work. The other question I had, I know last year we talked, and you guys did the paving on Van Ness up to Shield. No, up to Clinton.
Clinton.
Yeah, Clinton. And so in this budget, is the second half allocated to cover from Clinton to Shields on Van Ness?
Yes, we have planned on that. That's been on the priority list for the department. And within the streets operational paving line, which is in that summary in the budget, we'd anticipate we will have no problem in getting that project done.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. I know that we had talked about it last year, and the residents were very excited to have gone Van Ness and also that Weldon. Even the school was very excited to have gone that Weldon between Van Ness and Palm because it was in real disrepair, and so now kids can bike to school without having to go through that very cracked up Weldon Street. So thank you for doing that work. The other just questions that I had, and I don't know if it's you or I'm going to have to ask Jennifer, but in terms of some of the projects that you guys do through and paid through CDBG, so I wanted to see if I could get a report of these CDBG projects by district from this budget and then the last 2 years. I kind of want to just look at a comparison. So I don't know who that would, or Jane, would you be the one?
Yeah, I can get that.
Perfect, thank you. And then lastly, also, could you provide a report that identifies the public work projects by district with other funds such as Measure C, Prop 111, and then the gas tax? That'd be great. And I think those are all the questions I had. I do want to have, though, a follow-up with you and Bruce of just some of the other needs that I wanted to talk about in terms of for this budget before the final vote. Okay.
Glad to participate.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm next. A couple of things, Scott. I wanted to thank some of the folks that work with you for being very, very helpful whenever I've called. And I wanted to, first of all, thank Brian for he's always available and tries to make things work. And in particular, we had some sidewalk issues with an elderly gentleman that I called him just a couple weeks ago, I believe, and that got taken care of. And it had been years since, that it needed repair, and that got taken care of. And then another time I called him because I guess the person that takes care of streetlights was out because of surgery, but you accommodated the folks over on Washington Avenue and promised them stronger ballast, I guess, on their lights because 30 years ago, they'd been promised lights by the city, and so they were very happy about that. Have those been put in yet, or stronger ballast?
Okay. Have been repaired.
Okay. And then also I guess there was you sent me an email as well regarding some improvements that you were looking at on Jensen Avenue by Calwa School.
That's correct. And that actually is a fiscal year 16, this current year, not the one of the new budget, but this current year. I'd mentioned that we were able to get some of these other projects done for a little bit under budget, and as you're aware, we've had a number of meetings with the parents and the school at Calwa School. A lot of that related to some traffic and parking related issues, but as part of that, we really started to take a hard look at the pavement condition in front of the school. And I'd asked Brian Russell to take a look at that one and see what he thought, because I said, well, boy, this is all cracked up paving, and what kind of treatment would you see this needing? And the timing was perfect for us. It was a fairly small dollar project and something that we could get done. School was out already, and so the timing was perfect to get in, get out, and provide some benefit to the community. But that street was very much in need of repair.
Yes, and then also I believe, Brian, you took a look at there was an area that had no sidewalk that quite a number of school children walked in front of there on Jensen Avenue. And thank you for looking into that and starting, you found a little bit of money to do that. That was a piece of property that was annexed, I think, in the 80s into the city, which, so all that worked out. The parents were just ecstatic about that, and the fact that the city had gone out and met with them, and wanted to thank Jill Gormley on going out there and meeting with with the parents. Thank you, Jill. We needed an interpreter real bad, but for some reason they understood Jill, and everything worked out really well. But and they had some previous meetings with some folks from the county planning and some of the folks out there and street folks, and nothing had been happened. So they seemed to think that it was our fault. Because they didn't understand the jurisdictions. But anyway, once we got all that squared away. So Jill, thank you very much. They were very pleased with that meeting and the results that ended up with that. And then lastly, I wanted to thank Aaron, because Aaron's, he's always been there whenever we've had folks call us up or anything, that there's any issues with the medians and all that, he'll call them up and go over it with them or tell them why something can be done or can't. So that's been, it's just been real helpful, and the residents really appreciate, the attention that your folks give them. And I think all too often we don't acknowledge them going the extra mile. So thank you all three of you that are here. Scott, also. And then the email that you sent me regarding the street repair for Heaton and Townsend, I forward that to Mr. Saul, so he's going to be calling you up if the deadlines aren't met. So he's looking forward to that repair work on there. And the other part I had still is a concern, those properties that money was approved on Orange Avenue to buy the right-of-way. I mean, where are we at on that?
So the Orange Avenue project, that is now in the right-of-way acquisition phase.
Okay.
It's, that's not a big project, but it actually has all the components of even a Peach Avenue in the time frame. It has not a lot of design work. That's really the easy part. But working with Caltrans on the grant, getting that cleared, we're now in the right-of-way phase, so to acquire that piece. Following that, we'll relocate PG&E. The poles will move over, and we have the construction dollars built in the 17 budget. So again, I wish that whole process could go a lot more quickly, but again, it has all the pieces of, it's kind of a mini Peach Avenue, but we're going to get that one done.
What about the stop sign that was approved for Cedar and Woodward?
Those dollars are also in the budget for construction. We received the grant authorization earlier this year, and that's now moving forward. So that's included in the 17 budget to get that traffic signal construction started.
So it won't be a stop sign, it'll be traffic signal?
It'll actually be a full traffic signal.
Okay, and Peach and Hamilton Avenues, I thought we had done a traffic study there. And I think there had been approval for some stop signs or not?
Peach and Hamilton meets traffic signal warrants, and it's actually on the list that came to council citywide. We have over 50 locations that meet signal warrants, and we don't have funding to install. The one bit of good news, Peach and Hamilton, is even though it's unfunded right now on the list, it meets warrants. If we had dollars, we could start working on that traffic signal installation pretty soon. Measure C did have design money approved for that whole corridor from Butler all the way down to Jensen to widen that to 4 lanes. So, the good news, I know the good news would really be getting the signal installed. But we're doing everything we can. We have the engineering plans all drawn up from an outside consultant with the Measure C funding, and basically just all it takes, as soon as we can get some dollars to build it, that one's ready to go. So that's our one missing piece.
Dollars.
Okay. And we've looked at I've had my grants administrator look at every one of these cycles that comes in. We talked about what about Peach and Hamilton? What about a permanent sidewalk along east side of Peach Avenue down to the KB Home subdivision? So we're going to keep trying. We've not found a grant that we can be successful and acquire yet.
I know Fresno Unified purchased some land down the street there by Church and Peach Avenue. And then lastly, the one we do have monies for, progress, what's the progress on that is Belmont and Sunnyside?
So Belmont Avenue is when our plans are about 70% complete, and the real critical path on that one is design, acquiring the right-of-way from about a dozen parcels, and then again PG&E, moving the poles, then we go to construction. So we reached a pretty significant step. We were able to get on the County Board of Supervisors agenda a few months back and asked the county to authorize the city to acquire right-of-way within the county jurisdiction, because almost all those properties on the Gallo side, they're all in the county. And the board did something a little different. They authorized us to proceed, but not to utilize eminent domain. So I'm hoping that we can successfully, through friendly means, negotiate every one. My real estate supervisor, Craig Hansen, and his team, Pete Caldwell, Kathy Rodriguez, they're working on that already. And as soon as we get the right-of-way, PG&E is well aware of it. So that'll be the sequence. Acquire, you'll see those come before the council. PG&E, and we're looking to construct summer 2017.
What about Orange Avenue, where one side's county, the other side's city?
That one, we're successful. We've got all the funding needed lined up, federal grant dollars to do it, and right now we're hammering out a city-county cost-sharing agreement. County public works staff's been very supportive. We just need to get the agreement done, and that's also in the budget for this year. To do that full repaving from California all the way down to the curve to Jensen.
Are you involved with any discussions with the county on Edgar Avenue, where Betts Springs is at?
Yes, actually our engineering services staff is very closely involved with that development, and at the moment the street, it's been repaved on the county side, and there's just a small piece that's city, and again, we're looking at that as a possibility once the other work is done and wrapped up. That's not a lot of work. That's under $10,000 worth of effort.
10?
Under 10,000.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking for that one because I got a call from them, and I would be meeting with them pretty soon. So I'd like to be in touch with your
Great.
office on when that happens. So
very good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Member Baines.
Yeah, really quick, Scott. I neglected to thank you though, for all the work that you all have been doing in my district for the last year or so. So a lot of times people don't realize how long really the development arc from when you start to when you finish. So I appreciate you guys staying tenacious. Appreciate your staff. Appreciate you lining up the funding. I hear you're doing something similar for all of us, but I know that the public sometimes get frustrated. But you guys stay on it, and these projects take a long time to come to fruition. So thank you for all the work. Thank you for lining up the source of the funds, and then now for executing. So thank you and your staff. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the support and partnership.
Forgot one more thing. Therese Edwards wanted me to give her a shout out, or she'd slap me. So it's a shout out for Therese.
Screen is clear, so thank you for meeting with me this afternoon, answering all my questions. So I'm not going to go over that again with you and the budget aspect of it. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And thank you and your staff for your patience today. But this way we get to go right on through it, and we don't have to worry about any other items on the agenda. And I want to express my gratitude to you and all the troops here and the ones that are out doing some work right now as well. And not only do I want to support you budget-wise, but when my health gets a little bit better, I'm on that truck. And I've pledged to myself that I want to, before I'm done in 4.5 years, I want to hit 1,000 lights, 1,000 points of light. So it's a big...
Cap, you don't get the new truck. They've made that clear.
If it's new, it'll be used when I'm done with it, because I'm going to meet my goal, and you guys have cooperated and encouraged me and worked with me, and I really, really appreciate that. So I'm a hands-on guy, and I will continue to work together as a team. So thanks for all you do for us, and not just District 4, the best district, but the others as well. So thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And thanks again for your patience. So I think that's it for our meeting today. We'll have a closed session. City Attorney.
Yes, in closed session, we have potential litigation, Hustler Hollywood versus City of Fresno, and also existing litigation, Johnson versus City of Fresno. We will not need to come back out after the closed session.
Get with Fabiola and see. Thank you. Sure.
Good job, Scott.
I didn't touch it. And I'll have Scott.